Hello, everybody. We are here again for another episode of Artisans of Steel. I'm really excited for our guest today is Trey Hill. Before we get into the conversation with Trey, I'm going to talk about the super responses from the Patreon. If you want to become part of the conversation here on in the podcast as we're recording live, asking questions either live or before the show through the Patreon, go to patreon.com, look up Malmasi Fire Arts, and you'll find the Patreon and you can sign up and all that stuff. If you sign up at the illuminated individual level or higher, then that will get you to be part of these live conversations. If you can also go to my Instagram profile. I have the link tree there in my bio, and you can find a link to the Patreon from there as well. All right, this earplug was driving me crazy. I'm sorry. It's hard to tell how loud I'm actually being. This month's super sponsors are first Russell Tinsley of Ouzel Finch Beer. He's at Can't Make Knives and Ouzel Finch Beers. That's OOZLE Finch Beers from Virginia. They make wild and crazy, flavorful beers, and I've loved everything that I've tasted from them. I've had all kinds of crazy flavors too. From like these boozy sodas they make that taste like nostalgic, like orange grape root beer sodas, but they're all for grown-ups. They're alcohol. They got alcohol in them, so don't feed them to the kiddos, but they are super delicious. And then I've had peanut butter beer, like a peanut butter stout from them. I've had all kinds of wild things. So go check out Ouzel Finch beers. Also, Ouzel Finch, I believe, is now selling these. Oh, it's backwards, but anyways, this is heirloom jerky. These guys are, I think they're also from the East Coast, and they have all kinds of flavors. They're super delicious, and they're selling those at the Ouzel Finch, I believe the Ouzel Finch tasting room over there in Virginia. If you don't have access to Ouzel Finch beers, go to your local beer market, talk to the beer buyer about getting it in, because anything you get from them is going to sell. So it's not a bad move to get it in, and they're super delicious, like I said. All right, next up is Dan Hubbs. He is 66 Mountain Knives. He's on Instagram and Facebook at 66 Mountain Knives. He is my friend, the gentle giant, the very talented. He does awesome Damascus work. He makes a lot of EDC style knives. He's got one recently that has this like crazy topographical, looks like some sort of carbon fiber mixed with like copper or brass or something in there. I'm not quite sure what it is. It looks really cool. But he's a really great dude. He's doing good work, and he's worth giving a follow. He also has a lot of informational stuff, like instructional stuff that he's started doing in the last couple months on his Instagram. So go give him a follow at 66 Mountain Knives to see more of his work and to pick up some good tips. All right, next up is Lawrence Lake of Maritime Knife Supply. He's on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Maritime Knife Supplies. TikTok even a thing? Oh yeah, TikTok did come back. I wonder how things are going over there on TikTok. But anyways, he is a supplier, as is in the name, of everything you might need for making knives. From stainless steel like Damasteel, Damascus, as well as all other kinds of forgeable steels. You can get anvils, grinders, like anything you can think of, you can probably get from Lawrence. If Lawrence doesn't carry it, you can probably reach out to him and talk to him about trying to pick up a certain particular products. He's a great guy. It's always great to see him up at Maker Camp in October up in New York. And I'm actually wearing his gear. I've had, because I have such a big noggin, I had to tear the sweatshirt open. So I look like an 80s dad right now, getting ready to go to the gym. But I love this sweatshirt, and I love supporting Lawrence. He's a great guy. Yeah, go give him a follow, and go to maritimeknifesupply.com to get yourself some great knife making supplies. All right, next up is Gabe Fletcher of Anchorage Brewing. He's at Anchorage Brewing on Instagram, as well as at Anchorage Forge, which is his knife making page. He actually just got back from Alaska, or sorry, he he is from Alaska. He got back from a different part of Alaska called Petersburg, Alaska, where he was visiting and spending some time learning and working with Adam DeRogers, Mastersmith, ABS Mastersmith. Adam DeRogers, good buddy of mine, who someday I would love to have on the podcast as well. He went up to work with Adam, and they did some forging and worked together around hunters. And Adam's just such a great guy. I can't imagine how much fun those guys had, and like where they're at is like they're very off grid, and they got a sweet family. Adam DeRogers is married to Haley DeRogers. They got a couple kids. Haley is also a very talented bladesmith and knife maker in her own right, and so I imagine Gabe had a great time up there. And yeah, anyways, go give Gabe a follow, especially for his maker page at Anchorage Forge. He's doing a lot of really great work. He's doing all kinds of crazy collaborations. I'm trying to think who's coming up next. I think he did a Salem Straub collaboration, like low alcohol beer. And then I'm trying to think who's next. Maybe Will Stelter or maybe Adam, actually. But he's got collaborations coming up with a few different makers. And he's also going to be at the, Austrian Knife Show in May. So if anybody's going to be up in Europe, in Austria, at the Austrian Knife Show, go check out Gabe. Go say hello. Go see his work. He's going to be at the Austrian Knife Show. I can't remember when in May, maybe mid-May, something like that. So yes, go give him some love. All right, next up is Josh Weston. He is Josh A. Weston on Instagram. He is also at Dragon Forge Experience. I'm actually still kind of reeling from my conversation with him last month. I had such a great time chatting with him. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, go give it a listen. He has this really great forging experience that he's got set up at Renaissance festivals around the country. He's got 3 different locations, actually technically 4 different locations. And I think he's getting ready to do another one. In the podcast, he was kind of being like low key about it. But I did see on their Instagram, they posted something the other day where they are going to be, it looks like they're going to be doing some sort of pirate stuff. I'm not quite sure what that is exactly, but anyways, they're going to be doing some swashbuckling and blade forging, or maybe forging pirate swords. I don't know. I was actually thinking about this morning. I don't know much about the smiths of the pirates. Like, who were they? Who was doing the sword making for these guys cruising around the ocean and kind of messing people up? So anyways, go give Josh a follow. Go to Dragon Forge Experience. That's Dragon Forge EXP on Instagram to go see where they're at, what they got going on. And if you can get to one of those forging experiences, you should go definitely do it. I'm excited about, I think I'm going to try to work out getting down to Austin in November to go spend some time, probably just a week, and go do some work with Josh, as well as do some forging with folks. It's going to be super fun. And with that, we are going to move on to the bread and butter of the conversation of the podcast today. I met Trey. Actually, I've been familiar with Trey's work for a few years now, and it was just at Blade Show last year in Atlanta that I actually met him in person, saw his work in person, and I can't remember who it was. Somebody who, like, offered me, I think it was maybe Alfredo Faccipieri, that offered me a shot of espresso. And then I was like, where did this come from? Because I wanted another one. And I came over and I got to his table. I'm actually going to slide him in here. So I got over to Trey's table, and they got this whole thing set up like underneath the table. And then so we chatted and we were laughing and we were having a good time, kind of bullshitting for a little while. And then I saw your work, and I've seen it online, but seeing it in person is a very different experience. And it was probably I think it was definitely one of my like top 3 highlights of Blade Show last year was meeting you and meeting you in person, but seeing your work in person, I was just like, I was flabbergasted. Honestly, I was flabbergasted at the level of your finishes and your hamon work, and and all just like it was really great to see it in person. I think that's one of the, and I think you've said this recently too, but like one of the great opportunities about going to a show is seeing stuff in person, as well as but also meeting the people in person, you know.
Well, I mean, it doesn't help to have like a little espresso machine under your table to bait people in too. So
Yeah, like, oh, you want a little shout out?
yeah, a little shot of dude, that thing got work. It we went through because it's one of those like little Nespresso things, and they come in like a 10-pack of pods. And
Yeah,
I think we went through 75 pods over the weekend.
I
So I
believe
mean
it.
that machine was just like pumping, especially like Saturday morning. Saturday morning that thing was
You know,
busy.
I've
So
I've been pleasantly surprised by those Nespresso machines.
I can't hate them. I really
It's like
like. I had a
you think you should
Keurig,
hate
right?
it, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
like I had a Keurig, and I hated the Keurig because it's just
Sure.
like just coffee snob,
Right.
And uh, and then someone my wife bought me that one for Christmas, and she's like, "You'll
Okay.
like that. I've heard this one's good. I've heard this one's good." And dude, I like that's the only thing I drink out of now. I
Yeah.
mean, when I'm at home, and we just blow it. It sucks because the pods are kind of expensive, and it's
Right.
wasteful. So we try to like recycle them and clean them
Sure.
out and reuse them and do the things. But dude, that they make clutch coffee. So
It's pretty good, especially in the middle of Blaze Show. You're probably the best source of coffee at Blaze Show. So
well, it's
if you're
like
going to
we got
Blaze Show, do you take it to all the shows now?
yeah, no. Well, I'm not taking to Austria, so I think
Okay,
that's gonna be
that's
tough.
probably a good call.
But all the Blade shows, I mean, it's coming back this year. I bought a new one, so I
Okay,
bought like an up. Well, it's not even an upgraded one. It's just like the uh, uh, the one that I had at Blade Show didn't last much longer after Blade
okay,
Show.
you
So
just beat the shit out of
just
it.
beat shit out of it. So we did buy another one, and the coffee will return. So it'll be
Excellent.
coffee from us, and I think Damasteel's always got bananas. So
Bananas,
like,
bananas and coffee.
yeah.
Yeah, keep up that potassium intake. Um, yeah, dude, seeing your work, like I said, was flabbergasting to me. I think, and I really do believe that's the most accurate word for how I felt when I saw your stuff, because, like I said, I'd seen it online, but it's not the same as seeing it in person.
It's like
And
80% of a hamon is taking a picture of it. Like, and
fuck,
it's like they're
there's
so tough, so
well, and
tough.
you get such a like high refined polish on your blades.
Mhm.
Like the higher and more refined the polish is, the more of a fucking nightmare it is to take a picture of. At
I
least
found
in
out
my experience.
Walter Sorrells lives right around the corner from me. Like I
Okay.
saw him at a grocery store, and I was like,
In the
"What
produce
the fuck
aisle.
are you doing out here?" And he's like,
Yeah.
"I live out here," and I was like, "Oh, where?" And we shop at the same grocery store, and so he's right around the corner. But like of all the questions I could ask Walter, I was just like, "How do you take pictures?" So
Sure.
like he's this like world class knife maker, and I'm just like, "How do you take pictures?"
Right.
So
No, that's smart.
he's done a lot of help in that, and it's like the room's got to be dark. You got to be it's got to be lit funny, and it needs to reflect off something black, and like so. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
it is a whole process. So
Yeah. No, that's smart. And then those are definitely good points. But the polish you get really helps to highlight
mhm.
like I don't even know all the different names, but I think the Ashi and Aura are also like words.
Honestly, I wish I knew.
It looks fucking beautiful. No, it's like these it's like you get the hamon lines, but the way you like put the clay on, the activity is very, it's not just like a solid line, which
Sure.
has its place and its aesthetic, but like the wispy cloudy action that you get is pretty impressive.
There's a
And that polish, I think, really helps to make that pop.
well, it's always this like weird thing where like there's such a traditional style of hamon that is that just like wavy line and like a peak with like Greg Sims does them, and Greg Sims is
Yeah,
very much a mentor in terms of like knocking these things out, but we still kind of do things a little different
sure.
because there's a million ways to do it, and kind of none of them are wrong. Just
Right.
some yield different results. But that's kind of Hazenberg
Yeah.
and Maggie Bauer were two that like they're such
Yalla.
huge
Yeah.
inspirations of my work when I started getting into it, because there's so much you can do with them that's just outside of that wavy line.
Sure. Yeah.
Again, if you're not following Maggie Bauer, Bauer Blade Works, I mean that dude is. I mean he's the one that really like led me down this like rabbit hole of obsession and how to like play with it and mess around with it a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's Bauer Blades.
Bauer. And this is kind of like just a small taste of what your hamons look like. And your handle works really great too. I love the way you assemble everything, like the combinations of the different materials. It's really awesome, super fun. But
Yeah, I
man,
like color, and just like the world's too boring for,
yeah, for
brown,
sure. Well,
just a sea of brown chef knife handles. So.
well, and I feel like your customers gotta love it too, because it really like it is unusual. It's unusual in the best ways,
Mhm.
and that kind of unusualness it makes it unique,
There
and
was a
and fun and really playful. And I think it also helps add to the whole like it becomes a talking piece almost,
mhm.
right?
There was a really cool thing, District Cutlery, just to shout them out a little bit.
Yeah,
Those guys do uh, they're in Washington D.C. and they get a lot of food bloggers and all that are in there. But last year for Blade Show, I was just like really into these like subdued colorations and like just not really like straight color tones. And I was really into like, like 70s, color palettes. And so a lot of
sure,
the work that I had at Blade Show last year was very like 70s vibes. It was like lilacs and these like
right,
off yellows and browns. And like it was just a really, really like cool thing that I was like that representation of handles last year at Blade was very much like inspired by like mid-century and 70s, design style.
for sure.
And the just the other day, some like design blogger took a picture of my knives in their store, and it's like a mid-century modern account, and I was like, "Fuck
Oh
yes!"
wow,
Like I was just like, "Yeah, I
yeah,
did it." I was like, "Hell yeah!" Like that was it. Just like without talking about it, it was like noticed, and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool."
for
So,
sure. Yeah, I have a friend who what does he do? He finds mid-century modern and vintage furniture, and he repairs and rebuilds it and sells it. But there's like the stylistic, like the way the lines flow, and
mhm,
sometimes they can be super colorful, but they can also be kind of muted colors as well.
mhm.
But they work so well together. I love it a lot.
It's
What
like
was Oh,
it's
sorry, go ahead.
like just like very like minimalistic, but like
Yeah,
it's what that whole thing of like mid-century modern was like compression and then popping. So like, Frank Lloyd Wright, and I'm not an
right.
architecture guy, but I know, a little bit about it. But a lot of his like design work was based on like leading into a confined space and then expanding with this big boom and pop of like a big open
Right.
area with bright windows and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool like style that is, I mean, it's clearly timeless. I mean, you got a buddy that restores mid-century modern furniture, and I'm sure he does fine because
Yeah,
it
he's doing
is.
great.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure he's doing fine because, like, dude, that it's timeless, man. I mean,
Yeah.
everything comes back. Jinkos are back. If Jinkos are back, then you know.
For sure. Fuck, I
And
was that kid. I
as a
was that
reformed Jinko wearing kid, like I'm
Yeah.
kind of glad to see him. So
Yeah, I was that kid in my middle school who introduced the school to Jinkos because we had this store called Lamont's or Lamont's, and, they were on sale. There was, like, $15 for a pair of Jinkos. It was before they, like, went crazy, but they were
yeah,
like that, that baggy kinda, like, crisscross kinda look,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
then
And then they had like the snails and like they
yeah,
had
all the
like
different, like,
checker
patchwork
patterns
and
down the
stuff.
side. Like it was wild. It
So funny.
was like OG affliction jeans, really, in a
For sure. Oh my god. What was the other maker's name? You said Greg Sims and Bauer?
Bauer, Bauer blades, I think it is. I mean,
Bauer
just make sure that
blades.
it's still that. I think he changed it because not to get into his business, but I think he had an accident and got hurt, and then he was doing a lot of work with knives, and I think he shifted to leather work now. And
Okay.
it's just like you think his knives are great, like
Oh,
look at his
yeah, yeah.
leather.
Right. Right.
Um,
He
Bauer Classic is what it is now. Bauer Classic.
Bauer Classic. Yeah. So he apprenticed under Yella for a little
Yeah, yeah,
while.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, but his stuff was great. His leather was really good.
Yeah, I mean, he like his wallets and his sayas and all that stuff are just like, and he's making sayas for Yella now. So I mean, it's like, he's really come a long way in this, and he's studying with all these masters. You got to kind of go pretty far back, I think, to find some of his knives.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Yeah, his
but it's just like,
styles are sick.
dude, it's so
They're so
good.
fucking nice. Like, look at that. It's like the Armani suit of the chef's knives.
Look at his wallets, dude. Like his
Yeah.
wallets are just like I'm terrible with stuff like that. Like I will destroy it in a heartbeat, and I'm just like,
Oh my god.
yeah,
Oh yeah, jeez. Yeah, dude, that's
I would like.
so clean.
I could be broke, but I would feel rich with that thing. You know, like.
Yeah. Wow, that's really impressive.
So, and just like the detail that he has in that, he took the same care with his knives. And I mean, he was just an absolute inspiration for me when I first started kind of going down this like hamon rabbit hole.
Yeah. Yeah, the
But I mean, it's
hamons,
just, I mean, his work is just absolutely everything he does at a master level. And he's just a very talented, like really cool individual. And anyone that's not just like, I'm obsessed with his obsession, if that makes sense.
yeah, for sure. Woo! Yeah, Bauer Classics, or Classic, not
Yeah, I
plural.
think Bauer Classic. Yeah. Yeah.
Bauer
Yeah.
Classic. That's good he was able to get that. It's so hard to, like, get handles these days.
Yeah. Hmm.
Like, there's one I wanna get, because I have this, idea for a sharpening company that it just, like, is a DBA,
Yeah.
or doing business as,
Yeah.
and the fucking person that owns it on Instagram is like some person who started a fashion page and they haven't posted since like 2016. And I'm just like, what's going on? Like, did you lose the password? Are you just like over it? Or like, how
Can you
can I
pay
get
someone to
that up
hack
here?
it and then get it? You
I
know?
know, like, how do I get it? Yeah. People are losing pages all the time.
Yeah, yeah. How come
Fuck.
this one can't go away? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I got I I go through these like weird spurts where I'll like have an idea and I'll buy the web domain because they're cheap. You know, they're like
Sure.
$3 a year sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I own like 40 web domains that I pay every year. And every year I get the bill and
Yeah.
I'm just like, I mean, it's just $100, you know, and
Right.
it's kind of worth the joke because you know, so,
I like that. Yeah.
the
I have, and maybe you have a brain like this too, but I have so many ideas and I never have enough time. And honestly, like if I just focus on knives, I'll be good. But my brain wants
mhm.
to go 1,000 different directions. And my biggest issue is trying to stay focused.
Yeah, my life is
Ever.
kind of told in these like eras of like whatever obsession that I was kind of into throughout the years.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, just like backstory, like I put myself through college raising like snakes and lizards.
Okay.
And so I was like this weird reptile kid in high school, which, you
Sure.
know, in middle school and all this stuff, I was like pet shop kid. So I was
Right.
always hanging out at pet shops. And it's so funny because like by the time my parents split when I was young, but by the time I was a senior in high school, I was sleeping on the couch at both parents' house. I was like, you know, back and forth through custody.
Yeah.
And because my bedroom was full of snakes and lizards, and it was just like,
Oh wow.
if I take my bed out, I can add more. And so that was what I was doing. So I was sleeping on the couch, and then just to keep this like massive collection of, you know, all these like exotic, you know, snakes and lizards that I was doing, which was, I mean, it was cool. It was a lot of fun in high school. And we a couple, you know, during COVID, you know, the era of COVID was also the Tiger King era. You know, you remember that?
Oh
Sure,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
where everyone was obsessed about Tiger King, and we're all like at the beach, and I kind of avoided it because I just like I don't that whole crowd is like I know them, so I just kind of avoided it.
Oh okay.
And so we're at a whole family gathering at the beach that year, and it's my wife's side of the family, so there's like 25 of us. And one night they're like, let's turn on this Tiger King thing, and it's 2 minutes into Tiger King, and I'm like, what's Tom Crutchfield doing on this? And then it pops up on the bottom, Tom Crutchfield, reptile expert, and the fucking energy shifts. Like they're just
Uh-oh.
like, what is going on? So it was fun to tell stories about all these guys that are in that show because I don't know a lot of them close, but I
Sure.
do. They were in the same circle. Like the exotic animal circle is kind of fucking wild. So
Right. Well, and I know I just met a guy. He has a business breeding and selling ball pythons,
yeah, yeah, like the
and
Bob Clark ball python days. Yeah,
he's doing fucking six
Mhm.
figures.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I
It's
was
nuts. And he's
when
like,
I was
dude,
in.
it's so crazy. It's you got a container, you got, you got the
Mhm.
stuff and you feed them and stuff, but like he's I don't know, he's just like it's a lot like a large percentage of it is profit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like it's it can get to be a dark industry in a weird way.
Sure.
And there's a lot of anything that there's a lot of money involved can get dark, you know.
Mhm.
Um, so I've completely stepped out. I don't even own any of it anymore. I barely have a fish tank, and but like back in 2002 to 2004, 2099 to 2004 probably.
Yeah.
If you bought a bearded dragon in the state of Georgia, there was like a 70% chance it came from me. So
Right.
yeah, it was a wild thing. So
My
it's cool
kids.
stories, but like
Yeah.
I'm glad to be out of it. But so it was reptiles, and then it became cars, and then it's knives, and
Yeah. My
I was
kids
really into like old Volkswagens for a while,
Oh
while.
yeah.
So,
I love Volkswagen. Yeah.
yeah,
I had drove a couple different, not the old. I was driving like a 70s Volkswagen.
yeah.
But it was kind of like this weird in between from like the original body type to
Mm-hmm.
like, because the body type I had, they only did from 68 to 70.
Mm-hmm.
And then 71, they started changing the lights and the gas cap and shit like that.
Yeah,
And the bumpers. And so it was like this weird in between bubbly kind of thing, but it's transitioning into like what a lot of people consider like a kind of a classic slug bug,
yeah,
or
yeah.
sorry, a bus. But man, it's so crazy to try to get into that shit now. Like both of those
So
different
expensive.
70s Volkswagens. So there's 1970. Both of them I bought for 1,000 or less. Both
Yeah,
had motors. Both ran. Both had like good corners and like almost no floor rust.
yeah.
And to get something like that today is like $15,000 to $20,000, and it's like
It's
still
wild.
fucking bare bones. And I was just like, what happened? I was like, well, I guess I'll never get into those again. So if anybody out there is like interested in trading a knife for a Volkswagen, let me know.
Yeah,
But
I've got the only thing, I've got a bus left. I've got like a '69 Westphalia pop top camper
oh,
bus.
nice.
That's for sale. And
Oh,
then
for $20,000.
yeah. Not there yet, but close. But yeah, and then I've got an old like 1981 Rabbit pickup truck that I just kind of love.
Oh
So
yeah, dude,
yeah,
those little Rabbit pickup trucks are so cool.
that's a cool thing. Yeah, my
Dude, I
wife's
saw
like, "You
like
need to put your logo on it and like drive it around," and I was like,
for
"Oh,"
sure.
so I don't know.
Yeah, what is the third body type? I can't remember what year they started doing like the third body type where it's a little bit more kind of like geometric, but
Mm-hmm.
I think they're called Ducas.
Oh yeah.
So the truck with the cab, with the
Uh-huh.
crew cab, and I saw one cruising up the street the other day. I was like, what the fuck? I haven't seen one of those in like 15 years.
A buddy of mine has one with that has a wrecker on the back of it, like like the
Oh,
cross, like a snatch and grab wrecker, and it's an
yeah.
original snatch and grab wrecker from the early '80s, and it's the Vanagon body style with the truck bed.
Yeah.
And it's got a wrecker on the back. It's the coolest thing on the planet. It's
No
so rad.
shit. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I always thought it would be cool to get like one of those 4x4 synchro campers. But yeah, somebody actually had one for
money. Yeah,
somebody had one for sale down the street. And yeah, it was at least $21,000. It's like,
yeah. People put Subaru motors in them now, and
oh yeah,
they're
dude.
really fucking cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
The old like WRX motors. It's cool. They do a lot of stuff to them.
Dude, what's crazy is like maybe it's that model or that motor type, but it's like a fucking straight swap out.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like
they just like
it's
most
so
of it like
basic.
bolts right up. Yeah.
Unbolt the old one, bolt the
Yeah.
new one in. So much
Welcome to
more power.
Volkswagen talk, everyone. So
Yeah, for shit. For sure. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about the bearded dragons because my kid is absolutely obsessed and loves dragons. So is my wife.
Yeah,
And so it's her obsession that he is definitely latched onto.
sure.
But like I think the DeRozers actually have a bearded dragon or two, and I've like been curious about getting one, but my concern always when it comes to getting an animal like that that's in some sort of terrarium or something, is like, I don't even know if that's the right word.
It's close. Yeah, I get
Terrarium.
it.
Or whatever. Not a fish tank, but one for a dry tank.
Yeah.
Is what size of an enclosure that you actually realistically need for something like that?
Like a 40 breeder is probably the
I don't
crazy
even know
thing
what
is
that
like,
means.
yeah. So it's like 36 inches by 18, 36 by 18 by 18.
Okay.
So that's big enough for, a single adult, but you don't want to put a baby one in there. And if you ever get one, don't buy a brand new baby because they're pretty delicate. Once they get like 5 months old, they're pretty hardy. But
Okay.
the little tiny baby ones, as cute as they are, they're a little tougher. So
Sure.
buy
Yeah.
something a little bigger and put it in, like a 20 long for a year, and then it can grow into a 40 breeder.
Yeah. I do a lot of roadside shopping. People have shit on the side of the road, right?
It's just like
Uh,
my people. Like,
dude,
just like,
I've picked up so much great stuff off the side of the road, but one thing was I think it's I want to say it's a 2-foot cube.
oh yeah, 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 yeah.
And my thought originally was like, "Oh, I could put water in that or brine and then do some water quenches and you can take video and see it." But then it's just sat there and I'm like, and recently now my kid's like, "Oh, I think I want to get like a lizard or a newt or
Yeah.
something like that." And
Look at a crested gecko. Crested gecko would go fine in that, and would be.
crested
They're a
gecko.
really cool animal.
Mm.
They're really easy to take care of. It's kind of a cool story. Like, it was a species that was saved through like commercialization. They were practically extinct in the wild, and
Oh,
they
really?
made it into like the private hobby. And it's like there's more tigers in Texas than in the wild. There's far
Sure.
more crested geckos in captivity than there are in the wild. It's a really cool like um, uh, conservation story.
Interesting. Oh yeah, I've
They're
seen these
cute. They're
guys.
great, and they're super easy to take care of. They eat baby food and crickets. Like, they're super easy. Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna do a quick screen share just so people who are
Yeah, man,
listening,
they're cute. They're
if you're
dope.
watching the video, you can see them.
They
Yeah.
stick to glass. They curl their little toes. They're great, man. It's a cool little
Yeah.
gecko.
Oh, that's so interesting. Oh, well, I'll keep that in mind because yeah, I think right presently we're renting, so that's not having pets in our house is not a thing.
Yeah.
But the goal is soon to be owning and yeah, probably getting something like that would be one of the first things that we did. Um,
Is your shop at your house?
my shop is not at my house. My shop
Okay.
is at a friend's property.
Mhm.
He's not far from here. He's like about 15 minutes away, and he's
Yeah.
got space, and he bought the property. It already had a couple warehouses on it, and so
Mhm.
I just have like a little 750 square foot corner out of a
Nice.
3,000 square foot building.
I have I'm we bought a farm on foreclosure back in like 2013. I say we, my wife did. She had the forethought. My wife went to school for hunter jumper for riding horses at
Okay,
a nice horse riding,
yeah.
school. It's like she and the horse had a scholarship. It was really cool. But if you think rent's expensive, I mean, like, horse boarding is fucking wild.
Sure.
And so when she got out of college, she did this really great. My wife's the hustler of the pair. Like, she really, like, she will talk her way into it. Like, she'll figure it out. Like, she just
Sure.
has that drive. And they found this little farm that's out here, and just we're like 20 minutes from downtown Atlanta. And so we've got like 10 acres, and we've got a
Oh,
big
geez.
barn, and I've got the internal space. And it's the same thing. The internal space was probably 3,000 square foot,
Mhm.
2,500 square foot, something like that.
Yeah.
And I was in this shop, and I was just like, it's wild how tired I got from, like, doing something at my bench and then walking all the way to the corner to like,
Right.
like, to go like use the grinder again and then walk back. And,
Yeah.
of course it's full of broken cars and shit. So like, I'm like walking around everything, and everything got dusty because like I was unprepared for how much dust knife making made when I
Oh, yeah,
first got
sure.
into this. So I guess it was the end of last year, about November, after the Damasteel show. I was
Oh,
just like,
sure.
I'm declaring war on dust, and I cut my shop space into a third. And oh my god, I love it. I love it. So I've got like a grinder room that's blocked off, and I love it. It's the best thing. I just sit out there and just like look around because I just like being in that new space so much because it's nice and clean
Right.
and well lit and all that. So
Yeah. No, proper lighting is so crucial. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed lately is what are they? From Costco. You can get these Coda lights, or it's the brand, but I'm sure there's all kinds of different brands. But the
yeah.
LED um like tube lights, they look like the
Mhm.
halogen, but they're LED and you can control them with a remote, the brightness and dimness, and they run off
Mm,
just a plug
yeah.
and you can put them wherever. They're super flexible on where they go. And it's like I think it's like $40 for a pair. So they're
Oh god,
basically
yeah.
like 20 bucks each. And they're fucking great. I've had mine in my shop now for a year and a half. Haven't changed a bulb. Use them
Nice.
every day. Yeah. And I, I love having that flexibility of like either popping temperature or the brightness up really high or taking it down low
Can
for
you change
whatever.
the color temperature on them too, like the
Um,
spectrum changes?
I think it depends if you have the bulbs to do it. I think you
Yeah.
can. Um, but yeah, shit. Actually, yeah, you must be able to because the remote's got it doesn't just have a temp or a brightness control. I think it does have a temperature control as well.
I took one of these, like the influencer ring lights. They're like this big,
Oh yeah, I
they're
got
like
one of
massive.
them.
And I took one of those and like I mounted it to the wall of the shop so it hangs right above my space. Because I do think that's another thing I wasn't prepared for is like getting into this thing is like how important directional light is, especially with
Sure.
polishing. With polishing, directional light's like crucial.
Yeah.
But the just being able to see work and I'm not getting younger. And
No, me either.
so I mean
My
it's
back
just like
actually just went out yesterday, so I'm feeling it right now.
yeah. So
Yeah,
I mean, that was like a really that's good to know on those because I do need more light in like the dusty room. So
sure. Well, and I like them as general lighting, but I actually, as much as I can, I try to have light, like, on my face.
I feel like I've seen you did a really great like S grind video, and I think you
Mm,
talked. It was I don't know if it was like it was like the brim of your hat or if it was like under your like around your neck or something. I don't know, but you had this like line of vision light, and I was like, oh shit, it's really
yeah,
cool to not like roast an edge on a really thin like chef knife edge. So.
for sure. Yeah, well, so when I'm hand sanding, I have just, like, something that I wear a cap, and
Mhm.
it's a cap light, but it
Okay.
pivots up and down, and it was,
Mm.
like, super inexpensive off
Yeah.
Amazon. I think it was, like, a pack of 3 of them, and they last for a couple hours each, but I have a few of them, so it's just, like, while I'm using one, another one's on the charger, and when this
Oh,
one
they're
dies, I
rechargeable. Oh,
just swap.
cool.
Yeah, and I always try to get rechargeable
Yeah.
because I I hate throwing out batteries.
I'm
Eh
just like, where do they blow up? Like, I don't. They surely blow up somewhere. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, and I hate the idea of just, like, this endless, you know, consumption of batteries that, like,
Yeah.
honestly, like, I used to have single function light, which was great. It was just like a pen light, but the
Mhm.
fucking batteries, it was 2 I think it was 2 triple A's. They
Mhm.
lasted maybe 2 hours, and then it's like,
Oh yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
"Fuck, I hate it." Just makes me feel dirty. It feels gross. I don't know. But anyways, so I try to use rechargeable wherever I can. And so when I'm grinding, I have a couple like small, they're just like but they're like 3 function, which I hate. I wish because
Mhm.
you have to cycle through the functions. I
Oh
wish it
yeah.
was just
Yeah.
one click pen light. But
One
they
flashing SOS and
it
the
does it.
yeah.
Yeah, it goes from bright to dimmer to flashing. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
fuck this thing. Because sometimes it's like I'm like, "Where is it?" And it's, like, in my eye. I'm like, "Which
Yeah.
one or, like, which function is it on?" And, but I have the 3M kinda quick release respirator,
Uh-huh.
and I have, like, the flat pink, purple, whatever, uh, filters on it, and
Oh
I
yeah.
can
Yeah.
clip
Yeah.
it straight to the filters, and the way those filters are angled in, and you
Mm.
can kinda pivot it off wherever, up, down, um, and
That's a good
you can
call.
shoot it straight at the thing.
Mhm.
And what would be like the most ideal setup would be to have um like because those, even though they're rechargeable, they still only last like a couple hours on the highest light brightness,
Mhm.
whatever. Um would be to have a power bank, just like whatever, a $20-$30 power bank with something that you can clip or make or add a clip or something and clip that to your apron or your shirt or
You
whatever.
need like a
And
holster, like just
yeah,
full of battery
and
packs.
you just have, like, the lines going from the lights into the power bank, and then that thing will last you days.
Oh, that's really fucking cool. Yeah, I'm like, I'm such a like, knife making has made me such a tool nerd because every
Sure.
time I use something, I'm just like, there has to be a better way,
Me
which is
too.
like, yeah,
Always. Just
which
like
is why this like that like we talked about it a lot after Damasteel, but that shitty 6x48 Rikon grinder is my favorite thing on the fucking planet.
oh,
So
yeah.
I love that. And then I just bought the new 3 inch. It's like a 3x79 grinder from Housemade.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Those guys came out with that one, so I bought that one. So I'm excited for that. And then I just bought these big grinding stones from England that I'm now trying to figure out how to get them over here. So
Oh,
yeah, it's really I just like, there just has to be a better way than, I love 2x72s, but I'm just like, there has to be a better way. So
There has to be a better way. Well, before we get into more polishing stuff, let's back up, and we kind of touched on some of your past, but like, where did you grow up? What was life like as a kid? Like, and how is that reflected in what you do now? Or how did that lead to what you are doing now as a knife maker? And knife making isn't even your full-time thing. Knife making is your side
yeah.
thing. You got a full, like a day job. Um, like, yeah. So how did things, what, where did it all begin?
In the fall of '82, um, I always like affectionately say I got a double dose of preacher's grandkid in me. So like the only
Okay.
thing worse than a preacher's kid is a preacher's grandkid.
Okay.
And so like my dad's father was a Lutheran minister, and my dad was like, I think the light, yeah, there it goes. I'm in a conference hall and the lights
Okay.
go off if I don't keep moving. So I'm just like trying to do this a lot. My dad was like an executive, and he went to architecture school, and that didn't work out, and then joined the military and went to Vietnam and made it, and did some
Oh, wow.
like he's got an interesting story that even he doesn't talk about. So it was,
I'm sure.
it's heavy,
Yeah.
and so then he was an executive. We, grew up in Columbus, Georgia. Went to school, high school, was clearly a, snake and lizard reptile nerd. And the joke is I like walked into a pet shop when I was 13, and I've just never left, because I like to this day I sell dog food, So I mean, like my
Okay.
full-time gig is I work for a pet supply distributor, but we 90% of our business is wrapped up in bougie dog food. So
Okay.
that's the day job. So and then knife making was there it goes again. I don't know, we might just be in the dark, but the knife making was funny, man. I picked it up during COVID, like so many people did, and it was an interesting time to pick it up, because it was it was tough to get stuff in a way, because everybody, there was like that, it was like the gold rush for hobbies
Right.
was during COVID. So my wife was doing pottery. She went to school for art. I mean, she got the scholarship to ride horses, but she did art, and we
Okay.
met because she was doing marketing for the same company that I was working for, or still am working for, really, but she left. And then COVID happened, and we're all kind of stuck at home. And she's like, "You need to do something. Like you're like bothered.
She's like,
You need to do something. You need a fucking hobby."
from the warmest and most loving place, you
Yeah,
need to fucking go do something.
yeah. I love you, but get the fuck out of my studio. It was like, and it wasn't really like that, but it's close. It's not that far from the truth, but it's definitely an exaggeration. But
Sure.
so I started making like cutting boards, right?
Okay.
And I'm a mediocre cook at best, but I grew up with my dad is just like, he always had this like thing of like, oh, we can fix it, and it's like my grandparents survived the Depression, and like it's just, my grandmother, when she passed away and we cleaned out her attic, was 25 years of Christmas paper that she didn't throw away. It
Oh,
was so
wow.
funny. You would watch her take apart Christmas paper, and she's like peeling back the tape and saving it.
Yeah.
And no one really knew what she was doing with it, but it would end up in a box, and we thought she just threw it away and she was being clean, but no, it went in the attic, right? So she
Right.
was like, so there was, and then
25 years of that. Wow.
yeah, and they
Wow.
had, my grandfather had a farm, so he was a pastor, full time was his job, but he kept cows, and they had 75 acres in Gilbert, South Carolina.
Hmm.
And I grew up, helping him work on tractors and build fence and stuff like that in the summers. Like I would get out of school, school would end in June, whatever. And 2 days later, I was at my grandparents, and I was there until about 4 days before school came back.
Oh, wow.
So I spent whole summers up there. I mean, it was a little bit of back and forth, but for the most part, it was full summer. So just always had this like hands-on mentality of like just being able to fix, being able to build, and like trying to figure it out. And my dad carried that on, and it was, my first car was a little old Volkswagen, and it was always kind of working on fixing that up. And
Right.
so I've always been like handy, and so cutting boards are, I mean, I was just like, oh, I can make them for Christmas gifts. Like, this is fine.
Sure.
And then it led into this like weird thing about knives, right? Because like that's the whole reason for like end grain cutting board. It's like, oh, it protects the edge. I was like, well, what's that mean? You know,
Right.
you start diving down into, you know, what a cutting board is to a knife, right?
Yeah.
And then my wife is like pushing for this like hobby thing, and I'm just like, well, maybe I'll get into knife making. Like, what? Like, how hard can this be? And so I go on Facebook, like everyone does, trying to figure out a hobby,
Yeah.
and I find the beginners knife maker group, right? And so that was on like a Sunday that I sat down and found this group. On a Monday, I paid $10 to enter a raffle, and they drew my name. It was they were used to do these knife maker packages, so you got
Yeah.
like a little Atlas forge, you get a little Atlas anvil,
Right.
2 hammers, a little bit of steel, and that was kind of it. But it was like a $10 raffle. And my wife jokes that it's like it was truly meant to be because they drew my name twice. So
Oh
like,
shit.
yeah, they drew my. I was there were 3 raffles on that day, and they drew my name once, and then they drew it again, and then that just kind of started it.
I
And
see.
then, like every weird child, samurai swords are fucking cool, you know?
For sure.
Yeah, and I'm so like, then it's like, what is this? Like, why does it look like that?
Mhm.
And so then that led to the hamon thing, and then it just, you know, disposable income and too much time on my hands. I was knocking out essentially knife coupons, if
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know if that's the right word, but like I'm just doing like pre-grind blanks and claying them up and quenching them and scraping it off. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. That didn't work. Throw it out. Do another one. And it was just like, yeah, we kind of touched on it yesterday, but it's like getting in reps is really what it was.
Right.
And then, so once I figured out like how to do it, the first thing I did was I bought that knife making kit and then immediately bought an even heat because I was like, well, I saved all this money on knife making, so I bought an even heat,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
So,
there you go.
and really that is like, I mean, people ask me for home advice all the time, and it's like that's the thing. I was like, you have to have an oven. You really need a
Yeah.
kiln. Like you just really do. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I got here. But you know, little punk rock farm kid that, you know, played in a bunch of bands in high school and, you know,
Oh
had
really?
a really good time in my 20s.
Yeah. Had a really good time.
Yeah. It's not sustainable, you know, not sustainable. And
Sure.
we were out here like protesting Bush. It was great. You know, so I mean, it was like, it was tumultuous, but it was a lot of fun. It was
Right.
just like wearing these emotions on your sleeve. And it was really
Sure.
just like raging and having a great time,
Right.
but,
What
you know, clearly not sustainable. So. I
right.
mean, it's kind of back, so it's kind of. I was like, you know, the crazier politics are, the better the music is. So
Sure. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good point. Um what what instrument did you play?
and guitar. I play guitar.
Were you vocals too or just
No, I can't hold a note or carry a tune. Like, you don't want to hear me sing. I played viola in middle school.
okay.
I tried to get into band, and they're like, band's full. Here's a violin, and I was like, no. So I mean, I did that for a little while. So I just like that style of creativity for music was I just don't have it. I don't have like that type of creativity. So
Sure. I got you.
um
It's interesting how many knife makers are also musically um I guess I don't know what the but also musical, I guess.
yeah.
Also, like I play guitar. I try to sing.
Yeah.
uh what is it? Gabe Fletcher is a fucking crazy talent. He plays guitar, bass, drums. He does blues harmonica.
No shit.
Beck fucking anything he wants to figure out, he can figure it out. Salem Straub is another multifaceted musician as well.
We're back.
We're
Like,
back. Oh, the
that's right.
light.
Yeah. Thank you.
Jaden Saminsky is another guitarist and I think also
Oh,
bassist.
Jaden. Yeah. I like
Yeah.
that kid. He's a good dude.
Yeah,
I like
he's a
him a
good
lot.
dude. Yeah, there's so many makers who also do music. I wonder if there's some sort of weird connection either around I guess more than anything, like maybe just like how the brain processes
Like
or
food and
work
music.
operates.
It's interesting because I think like both food and music are kind of like this weird like counterculture adjacency
Mm,
in some different ways where just like it kind of both of them kind of like require a refusal to follow the rules.
Sure.
Like, even with, like,
Or
I mean,
stubbornness to
or
follow the
stubbornness, yeah, yeah,
for
yeah,
me, it's
just like
stubbornness slash
yeah, yeah, just like
laziness. I'm like, I know the recipe says that, but I'm just, I'm gonna
yeah,
kinda do
it's
this
like I can
other
do this
thing.
the easy way, or I can just beat my head against it until it works, and,
Right.
I'm definitely a beat my head against it until it works, so,
Sure.
yeah, I'll do it 10 times the wrong way when someone's told me the right way already, so,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, so, I mean, that, like, it's interesting. I didn't, I never made the connection to music. Michael West, doesn't Michael West play a guitar? And he always, like, running around
Oh, yeah. Michael
yeah,
West.
he's running around Blade Show at the
Yeah.
pit with a guitar all the time,
Yeah,
yeah.
Don Wynn's another musician. I think he does piano and guitar. Joyce Cuddy, she plays guitar, violin, and I think she might do piano as well.
Don Wynn's a little car nerd too, I think. I think
He's
he's
definitely
yeah,
he's
yeah.
he's a big card for
He's
sure.
in, like, Skylines and Nissans, I think, so, yeah,
Yeah. He's I have a bad habit of doom scrolling through Instagram, but I find like I come across these great posts and I have whenever it's car stuff,
mhm,
I have like Don and like a couple like a good buddy of mine that I grew up with. Or actually a couple good buddies that I sent. It's like these like 3 or 4 people that I always send car stuff to.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But I have my people for food stuff and I have my people for music stuff.
yeah. He's, like,
And
cultivated
my
friend
people
group,
for cat
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
'Cause I grew up
Oh,
with
man,
cats. I
don't,
love
like
cats.
yeah, same, dude. We had dogs for years.
Yeah.
I I joke it's the world's I had the world's worst dog. She was the world's worst dog. She was awful. She was a bad dog, yeah. And she lived forever. She lived till she was, like, 18 years
Live
old.
fresh,
Like,
just a stubborn.
yeah, yeah. I talk so much shit about this dog. Like, I love this dog, but, like, when she finally passed away, like she tried to eat through a door on a Tuesday and she passed away on a Friday. Like, I mean, she
Oh
was
my
like, I
god.
mean, she was just never. She was a bull terrier. Like, I mean, she just had
Oh,
no
right.
chill whatsoever. Yeah.
Right. She's missing
Um.
part of her front lobe or something like
Yeah.
that.
Well, they're just like triangles assembled. Their head is triangle shaped, and there's just not
Yeah.
enough room in there for a real brain. So when she passed away, we're like cats. We're getting
Cat.
cats. So
Yeah,
we've got a cat. We got a bunch of chickens. We got sheep. We got
sure.
horses. Got a donkey. I love this. Like this, the
Yeah.
most emotional animal I've ever been around in my life is that fucking donkey. So
Dude, hearing donkeys bray
yeah,
because they're, like, sad or they're not getting enough attention, I'm just like, "Holy shit, that's a little too much for me."
it's it's wild how accurate Eeyore was as an animation. Like,
Oh, yeah, he's "Oh, bother."
yeah, I tripped over a bucket like 4 months ago in the barn, and like I scared him, and he hadn't come near me since. It was fucking 4 months ago. Like,
Oh
yeah,
my god.
yeah.
Like, "You asshole, you startled the shit
He's
out
like,
of
"You
me
smell
that
shit
one
of
time."
you." He's like, "Mm-mm." He's like, I can like bait him close to the peppermint, and he's like, he just like he leans in. He won't get close, but he's funny.
He's, like, trying to grab it with his
Yeah,
teeth
yeah.
or
He's
his
he's a
lips.
funny animal, man. He's
Yeah.
cool. He's a cool animal. So
Oh, that's so fun.
his name's
Ah, that's
Taco. So
Taco,
yeah, yeah,
the burrito.
yeah, yeah. Taco Beans is his name. Taco Beans. So
Taco bean. Oh, that's so funny. Because the Spanish word for donkey is burro, right?
yeah, yeah.
And so a little donkey is a burrito. So
A
taco.
burrito, taco burrito. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We call him a burrito when we put his blanket on him when it gets cold because he
Yeah,
gets
yeah.
he gets so cold everywhere. And he looks like a little. He just like runs. The first time you put the blanket on for the year, he just like runs like fast as his little legs can carry him because he's a mini. He's a little donkey. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, the
yeah,
minis are
yeah.
even
He's
cuter.
cute. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that would be so fun. You're so close to Atlanta. That's wild. Are
We're
you
doing
east or west or
we're west of the city.
okay. Oh, yeah,
We're
that's right.
trying to get together a thing for like chef knife makers and retailers before the show.
Okay.
So we're trying to like the Thursday before Blade Show where it's a little chill and people are kind of like relaxed because we got 10 acres, we got a pool, we got a pond. I mean, it's a really cool
You want
place.
a bunch of knife makers in the pool.
Hell yeah, yeah. Like,
It's
just
just
be like, just
floating.
yeah, just like well, it's a good way to just like relax and chill out. And
Yeah.
so we're trying to put that together. So we'll see how that pans out. I'm trying to get like Damasteel to sponsor it. So I think
Yeah.
I think they're on board. So it'll be fun.
I got you. Yeah. No, that sounds killer. Yeah, let me know. I'll be there Thursday. I'm actually gonna be teaching a bunch of classes at Blade
Oh no
Atlanta
shit.
this year. I'm teaching 3 classes. And one of them, because so many of the makers are obviously tied to their table during the show,
Mhm.
it makes sense that they're at their table. I was talking to Alicia, who's the showrunner, an organizer, and about the idea of trying to do something that's tailored to makers. And I guess that's something they had already tried to or started thinking about. And so Thursday is actually going to be kind of like, this is a class for makers, so that
Oh,
you can
nice.
take the class without feeling like you're away from your table or something like that.
Well, and all the makers are there Thursday because that's when we're all buying materials. Like
Thursday's the best day for
is the
makers.
best day as a maker is to be there Thursday early.
Yeah.
Because I pick up my badge like at 10 in the morning, and I just I hang out until like noon, 1 o'clock, and then head out. Because like High Koa, Jared, I think is his name. I'm terrible with. I'm the worst person when it comes to names.
Sure.
But High Koa is always there, and it's really nice to cherry pick some.
Yeah,
really cool Koa.
To have first pick is yeah.
And I think he kind of only sells at Blade Show now. So I mean, he's an artist too. Like he makes all these like traditional Hawaiian weapons with like the shark teeth on them, and they're made out of sailfish bills. And he's a real cool guy. So
dude, those sailfish bills are nuts.
Yeah, he turns them into swords and shit, and I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. So what is it? Thursday early, because it's wild. Like a lot of the purveyors, they'll be fucking set up.
Oh, they're setting up
because they know, because they know Thursday is maker buyer day. So Thursday is a great day for first choices, and then Sunday is a great day for deals on materials to help lighten the load. And honestly, even equipment too. Like, equipment purveyors, they're like, I don't want to go back with all this shit, so we can work out a deal.
I hate giving away secrets, but like the last 3 years in a row, 2 or 3 years in a row, I go get those palm green buffers because I don't want to take anything back. And so like they're another one that I hit up early, and I'm just like, oh, how can I was like, what are you doing with this? And he's like, I was like, I'll take it. I'll be back here Sunday. So it is a good time to buy like, grinders and stuff like that. I think some of the guys take them home. Because I tried to buy Travis Wert's grinder last year, and he's like, no, this was sold 4 weeks ago. And I was like, shit. So
I guess,
yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's just as much a buying show as a selling show for a lot of makers.
For sure. Well, and I know some of those equipment people, like they'll work out a deal with somebody who like shows up to help them set up. You're like, I'll give you one of these grinders
if you work the booth all day.
If you're setting up and you're hanging out and working the booth all weekend, then you can have this at the end of the day and you drive it back home, which is
because like
not a bad deal.
Yeah, no, it's not I mean, I'd almost take it. I was like, can I work 2 tables? Like, how do I do this?
You just get your wife to come and watch your table. Or, I mean, what is it? You're like, no. She's not interested. You just got to get Neil behind the table. Be like, Neil, guess what? It's your turn. You come back here.
That's what I need to do. Yeah. He's a good dude. I met him. I don't think he was there last year. I think I met him the year before. He was palling around with Zach Brown.
Zach Brown.
Yeah. Because he's got that Georgia Blade Works or Georgia Made suit. I don't remember. So, but yeah, he's got a whole business.
Southern Ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the knife making company, though, I think he sold to somebody down in Florida.
Oh, okay.
But he still has some stuff made through them. He just doesn't own it underneath his Southern Ground umbrella anymore.
You mean knife making's not profitable?
It's hard, man. It's a hard gig.
It is a tough gig, man.
But I was talking about Neil Warren.
Oh, Neil Warren. Oh, I thought it was like Neil Kamamura. Yeah. Neil Warren, yeah.
Because Neil Warren, I think you shared a little corner of your table with him, right?
Neil,
or was that a mistake? Somebody else. Oh,
he was down. I think he was like 2 tables down from us.
I can't remember who he was sharing a table with. Wow.
I don't remember. We've been like curating this row. I'm surrounded by Italians and French people because the French folder maker mafia is right across from me every year.
Right.
Like, those guys are superb, superb.
I'm sure. I feel terrible. I didn't even look at their stuff. I was too busy looking at your stuff and talking to Alfredo too.
Yeah. It was wild. Like the best thing I saw at Blade Show in like 2022, I guess, was this pocket clip that one of these guys engineered, and it's a floating pocket clip that when you pull it out, it sinks in. So it's wild. So
pull it out, it sinks in.
Yeah. So it like it's on like a cantilever, right? So like
Okay.
it cantilevers down, right? And so it
Yeah.
lifts up so you can put it in your pocket.
Yep.
And when like you're putting it in your pocket, the backside floats up.
Oh, interesting.
And then when you were to pull it out, it goes back and sits flush.
Oh, whoa.
And he's hand doing this.
Oh my God.
And it just like this is like that's like I love Blade Show for that. It's just like having something just like knock my lid back. I'm just like,
Sure.
what is this? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, are you
Yeah.
an alien? Like, what is this? Where is this coming from? So
Yeah. 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 I kind of was poo-pooing on shows for a little while, but that was also in the heyday of Instagram, because shows can be really expensive,
Blade Show's
especially
not cheap. Yeah.
especially for a table hold. Like for me, it's like $3,000 if I'm gonna hold a table and travel. So cost of
Yeah.
travel, cost of hotel, cost of food, cost of table. Like
Mhm.
I'm $3,000 right there,
And
and
it's also like, I mean, and your books are so far out too. So like, how do you now you're trying to get pieces in between books to take that are available for sale? You
sure,
know, like, yeah.
yeah, and so but I've come back around to being good with shows because it is really like one of the few opportunities to see work in person,
Mhm.
and to because you can only understand so much by looking at pictures online, and but then also having the opportunity to make these connections in person, because you can cold DM people all day long, but whether or not they're going to message you back is a different question. But if you went to one of these events and you met that person in face to face, and even if all you said was, I'm a big fan of what you do. I'm really impressed with blah blah blah.
Mhm.
My name's so and so. This is my page. Um, I just want to say I appreciate what you do. Whatever.
Yeah.
Like it could be as mumbly grumbly and like poorly spoken as that. But if you've even done that, and then maybe you message them later, and not with the Magna Carta, but just like
Yeah.
if you're struggling with something, they're more amenable.
Mhm.
I'm saying this I can't speak for everybody, but I know I am more amenable to helping somebody out that I've actually met in real life than some kind of like stranger who messages me completely out of nowhere through Instagram and is like, "Hey, tell me how to do this." And I'm like, "Who the fuck are you?" And also like, why do you think I'm just gonna I don't know.
It's weird because there is like a, um, and I don't know. It's just taking like it's a weird like ego conversation, I think, but it is weird to have, and because I mean I get it that I get them where it's just like, hey man, I'm making my first knife. How do I do a hamon? And I'm like, oh, like whoa,
This is a big conversation.
I was like, this is like we gotta like you gotta get reps in, and you gotta
Yeah,
like you gotta crawl. And I'm sure you get it too. It's just like, hey man, I just started knife making 4 months ago. I just bought a press. How do I make mosaic Damascus? And I'm just like, where do we start? Like
sure.
like where's your level? So the Blade Show is really cool because you're talking about that, and like Blade Show makes the knife community feel huge when
Right.
it's really not. I mean,
Yeah, it
we're
is
all pretty
tiny.
spread apart, and we're kind of all doing this in our own bubble, which really
Yeah,
makes like innovation seem so cool in the industry because a lot of it's just because people just have to they have to figure it out themselves.
yeah,
It's a cool thing, but it is also like a very like warm community in terms of like sharing information. I
yeah,
mean, even like like people like Mike Quisenberry and like these big mastersmiths that you would think are unapproachable are just these super chill, like really cool
sure.
guys that are willing to share. And
Yeah,
it's I'm here because people told me, so I
right,
feel kind of the same way. Like I'll tell everybody exactly how I do it. Now that doesn't mean they can do it because I've seen
right.
that happen a bunch of times, but you know, I'm happy to tell you exactly what I'm doing without, no holds barred. Like
Yeah,
I'm not, there's no secrets. I'll tell you how to do it because, you know, part of it doesn't mean you can do it. So
right. Yeah, it's a whole lead the horse to water situation. Like,
yeah.
I could tell you every single step, and does not mean that it will be successful. You might have small success here or small
Mhm.
success there, but to like, it's hard to just take even at if you have years of experience, you could talk.
Mhm.
I could talk to my buddy Mike Quisenberry, and I would talk to him about a certain aspect of something, and then I could go try to replicate it, and I'd still fuck it up.
Yeah.
It's not
And
gonna happen like that. You still gotta do the work.
even to the point of like me talking to like Greg Sims, who is like master when it comes to doing hamons, we do things so differently. And if I were to try to create something if I try to create something that looks like Greg's, I can't do it. And it's almost like vice versa in a way. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if he's ever tried to make anything like I've ever made, but it's just there's such a diversion in that style, but we're both doing in a strange way the exact same thing.
Sure.
I mean, the way he polishes is completely different from mine. The way that he quenches every aspect of it is dramatically different from mine, but he
Even
still
the way
has
he's
the
heating the
same like
blades, I think is
yeah. I mean, his just like a striking difference, but also a master in what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yella's the same way. Magdi was the same way. Like, there's a lot like in this like little hamon world. Like, we're all doing things dramatically different, which is
Sure.
kind of wild to me to still kind of get to the same place.
Yeah. I have very limited experience with hamons personally. I did do a hamon, but I don't know. I guess it was considered hamon. But like getting all of the wispy like character and like cloudiness, that
Mhm.
is not something that I've done a good job being able to get. I think part of my issue has been doing the hamon while the material is still thick and then
Mhm.
basically grinding it all
Grinding
away.
away. Yeah.
And it took me literally I think even on the most recent one I did, which was still like a few years ago, it didn't dawn on me, like, because like after you do the hardening and you get like the first little bit, you scrape the clay off and do a little bit of grinding, and you get a look and you're like, wow, that's really great. And then and then I would do all the finish grinding, and then I'd etch it again and be like, what the fuck happened to all that
Yeah.
cool action? And it finally dawned on me that some of that can be very superficial, and so
Mhm.
you have to be also thoughtful about getting close to what your finish dimension is going to be, or take into consideration the depth of the hamon and the amount of material that you got to remove. And I was just like,
Yeah.
oh my god.
I was thinking
There's
I was
still so
thinking
much for me to try to understand about this shit.
I was thinking about this last night actually, and like your the way you work math backwards to figure out how much steel you need to get your desired results, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
you have a very deep understanding of what you have to start with to get what you want, and just being able to math that backwards. And it's kind of like I feel like that's kind of where my work is like understanding where I need to be to see what is left, but just in a
Mm,
different way.
yeah.
Um, and how far to take things to make sure that when I'm at like my finished dimensions, like
Right.
because that's the whole thing. You from start to finish, you have to prep for finished dimensions on this thing, and
Right.
in terms of like height of bevels and all this mess. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting because like as it's gotten more precise and trying to stretch it farther, I've figured out little things of like, oh, I can take a little file and I can notch a little etch into where I want my line. So then when I'm grinding final bevels, I'm like, all right, I know this is where my clay stops, because you can't see it. You can't see it
Mm,
until you really polish and etch these things out. So
right.
just trying to like, how do I mark something that's still going to be there that I can then to have this highly polished knife finished and that thing not be there anymore.
Right.
So, and I say it all the time, like to really get a really great hamon, you kind of have to be willing to break the thing.
Sure. Well, and
Um, yeah.
even some of the best guys have a surprising failure rate, but
Oh,
it's
my
just
failure rate's high. Yeah,
like you
yeah.
said, like I think that was actually something we talked about at Blade Show.
Mhm.
Like I think you said something like 50%, or I can't remember the
No, well,
exact.
it depends. Like, so it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm doing like just a standard like 6, 7 inch chef that's pretty active, I mean that's pretty stable. Like
Sure.
that's pretty easy going, and failure rates very very low. 1 in 20 or something
Yeah.
like that. But if I'm doing this on like single bevels or
Oh my god.
like a 12-inch Suji or
Are you primary grinding that bevel on there too
mhm,
to help to preserve the hamon?
mhm.
through the finishing, right?
So I'm quenching.
So you have a mass
this-
distribution issue.
Yeah.
Oh
So there's
my
a
god.
yeah, dude. It's a funny thing because it's like to do like a 220 millimeter Yanagiba with a super active hamon. I mean, you're quenching that thing on a razor thin line, and then trying to fix it the whole time. So like,
Oh my god.
yeah, like honestly, like the best. There's no way. Actually, this came from you from a Knife Talk podcast talking
Okay.
about DET anneals. Like DET anneals changed my life.
Okay, yeah.
So just being able to relax the shit out of that steel,
Sure.
so that it is, number one, not prone to breaking. It's a little less liable to, move in a dramatic way. You know, the interrupted quenching and trying to get them to not break, and then immediately into a temper oven that's set really, really low, because I don't want to, like, again, like, even the temper can change
Right.
hamon activity in a little ways.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, I mean, it is an exercise in frustration for sure. I mean, but that's the point. Like, you just, if you have to be kind of willing to break them.
Yeah. Well, and what I guess one of a good starting question for somebody would be, because I'm thinking like, okay, if I want to figure it out, I just got to start. I mean, I got to start with having like some solid foundation of information to work from, but at the same time, I still got to get reps in. And the easiest thing would probably be to do stock removal blades, just so
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not spending all this time in all the forging, and then the effect of the forging on the steel and going
100%.
through
Like,
all that
there's
stuff.
carbon migration every
Yeah.
time you heat that thing up. The carbon moves.
Yeah.
So like,
So,
yeah.
well, and how that messes with the crystalline structure and the
Mm-hmm.
carbon distribution. And so, but what steel have you found that I guess maybe is readily available? Because there are some people who are like, oh, I only use such and such steel that there's a very
I use
limited
tire
quantity.
irons. I only use tire irons. I'm like, all right, okay,
Yeah.
W2 is honestly, like, it's such a great foundational steel. It
Yeah.
hardens. It's I only know W2. I don't,
Okay.
not only, but like, I'm intimately familiar with W2
Sure.
to the point where I can order a bar of steel and I'm just like, I'll wait for the next batch, and then when I find a batch that I like from like New Jersey Steel Baron, I've called and been like, hey, is this from the same smelt or batch or whatever steel?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, I think so. And I was like, cool, I'll take 20 bars.
Right.
Because there is there's fractional differences in,
Yeah.
the manufacturing process. And the good news is to get, the first thing to do is just get one to work, and then just start playing with it. That's really the only thing. So can you get one to survive a clinch? Cool. Now we can start.
Yeah.
And then, just like simple tips on like layout patterns. Like, what do you want? Do you want the standard wavy line? I can help you there. Do you want all this crazy activity? Cool. I can help you there. And then the activity is really where it starts. You start like teetering the edge, because you can get a standard hamon and full thickness steel and grind later, and it's still there. It's through. I really, like, I keep saying this, and I always forget about it. And every time I see him at Blade Show, I'm just like, fuck, I should have done this. But I say I'm terrible with names. The knife, he's a scientist that does all the
Laren
knife.
Thomas.
Laren Thomas. There you go. Yeah. Thank you.
I love trivia.
Yeah. Every time I see Laren, I'm just like, I want to put a cross section of one of these things under a microscope. Like, I really want to see what this grain structure looks like underneath, because I have what I think it is doing, but it'd be really cool to like cut up coupons and really get that thing and look at the structure. So it needs to happen.
I think it's a great idea, especially if you're willing to sacrifice.
That's the crazy thing, is you got to get a good one and be willing to throw it away.
Be like, okay, this is awesome. Now let's chop it up.
Yeah. But yeah, W2 steel is like, it's so forgiving. I mean, you can get hamons out of a lot of steels, but W2 tends to have the easiest results. For me, anyway. I know anyone overseas is like 26C3 is
Right.
would be the other one that is, any shallow hardening tool steel, anything that's under this like umbrella of tool steels, you can pretty much get a hamon out of it. So,
Yeah.
and
20
2063 is
Is that the
if
spicy white?
yeah, spicy white. So
Yeah.
if I'm just doing a standard carbon chef knife that I'm not chasing this like super high activity.
Right.
I prefer 26C3.
Oh, interesting.
But if
Okay.
I'm chasing after activity, I'm doing W2, which
Right.
eventually is actually going to change because um, I'm just now I just got a crucible, not a crucible. Crucible is what you melt the steel in. So I'm gonna try to make some woots because I think that's the next
Oh,
escalation for me. Is
sure.
woots are some kind of like it's really cool what they're doing with induction forges.
Sure.
I don't think that's quite figured out from like is it woots, is it not woots? Opinions
Sure.
vary wildly. Is it
Yeah.
Damascus? You know what I mean? It's that whole conversation.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of the next escalation. That or like Orshigane or probably not Tamahagane, but Orshigane is pretty obtainable on a small scale. So
Yeah. I will say forging a crucible cake is a fucking night or can be a fucking nightmare.
yeah, I bought a 50-ton press, which I think is okay.
Yeah, that should
And
be good. But you still
um
want to massage, but it's good to have that power, but at the
mhm.
same time, you're still just gonna kind of massage it
Well,
and
and
take your time.
I don't forge, so I'm
Right.
like working backwards into this thing.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
a guy
yeah.
that beat on railroad spikes. I'm just like, hell yeah, I can do this. I'm just like, I've never done it. So
No, well,
um
and I think breaking down a large chunk of steel into a bar is probably one of the safer processes you could do,
mhm.
but it is still going to be kind of a delicate process.
Yeah, and
And
then I've been also I was just messaging Casey at Lynn Valley last night. And I was like, all
oh
right,
yeah,
6-inch slab. Like, what's my max for an Anyang? And so I think that's probably on the horizon too. Is I really want an Anyang because I think that and a press would
sure.
really being able to get
What
because
could you?
I'm also trying to get to a familiar state, right? So I'm
Yeah,
essentially trying to take this cake and turn it into bar stock. And
right.
so like, okay, well, what do I need to process this into bar stock? And a rolling mill would be, I think, great. But man, those things, buffers and rolling mills terrify the shit out of me. So
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I think with the right power, like probably like I don't. Can you do a 165 on a 6-inch slab?
no, I think he told me anything up to like it was 100 and something, but it wasn't the 165. It was the one
Okay.
below it, which I think is like a 120 maybe,
Okay.
120 pound. I think it's the 66 kilo.
Yep.
So
Yeah. Yeah. That's
he
just
said that one would be fine on a 6-inch slab. So
yeah. Well, and also I guess you can adjust the size of your cake, your crucible steel
mhm.
cake, to suit the machinery that you have to work with it
Yeah,
or work it with. But yeah,
yeah,
Peter
like
Swarsbert would be a great resource for you.
yeah, I
He
love
has
Peter's work. He's such a good dude too. I've talked to him a
yeah,
couple times. So yeah.
he's so insanely knowledgeable, and he
Hmm.
has had a lot of successes, but he's also had a lot of failures.
Hmm.
And I think failure is an underestimated necessary part of learning.
Oh, for
And
sure.
he has
Yeah.
such a depth of understanding because and I mean that's how I have such a depth of understanding around Damascus is a lot of
Yeah, same
failure.
for me for hamons. Like
Yeah.
I'm completely willing to break them
Yeah.
and throw them away. So
Yep. And so I think yeah, he would be yeah, so if you got a connection there, yeah, definitely lean on him in regards to like even like chemistry,
hmm.
especially if you're trying to do something that's more suitable for a water quench.
Hmm.
Um and but I think that's probably one of the better uses of like the induction forges and crucible
Yeah.
making your own crucible steels and being able to break them down is to be able to have that dialed in chemistry
Mhm.
that works for a particular style of hamon, and you can adjust it for other styles and stuff like that. But I think that is probably one of the like Woots is interesting, and it's very cool, and there's like a kind of like a deep history there with that. But the act of hamons and be able to like basically make your own knife steel and
Yeah,
then forge
custom
blades
to
that
me. Yeah.
yeah, it's fucking cool.
And then to like to get
But it is a fucking it's like a week's worth of work right there.
yeah,
Breaking
well,
that
to
shit,
get
making it,
the
and breaking
especially
it
to
down.
get like the patterning in what's so that you're kind of like you're doubling up on activity. So you're
Right.
chasing this activity in the bar of steel itself, and then kind of my understanding is you kind of kid gloving it a little bit to make sure that you're not ruining all that
Yeah.
throughout the process of making it, and then trying to do the same thing with hamon. I
Right.
think that's like the next like that would be that's like the next escalation of this like grand experiment that I'm doing. I mean, the crazy thing is I'm trying to do this for a bunch of people that don't want to buy it. So
I think it's important though for anybody who's pursuing this, especially if you think you're going to do it full time, to build in your own time for your own personal experience or experimentation and learning, because it can become a very serious grind really
Mhm,
fucking quick when you're just making shit for other people.
mhm.
And there's some enjoyment that comes with the learning and the struggle of getting into that process and making stuff for other people. But at a certain point, you get it, and now you're
Mhm.
like, okay, now it's just doing the same shit for me. At least if I feel like I'm just doing the same shit over and over again, I'm like, okay, how am I going to make this interesting for myself if I'm going to continue to do this for the rest of my fucking life as a
Yeah.
career? And I have had to force myself to build in that time for experimentation and exploration, um just more than anything to like satisfy that part of my brain that's like
Mhm.
all, all the other
Yeah.
directions. It's like, all right, let's take one of those paths today.
It's like
Let-
it's just building a bunch of mirrors to channel focus,
yeah.
where you're just like really trying to just like dial in focus. And I run into the same thing where I'm trying to, you know, like despite my username being Third Hill Customs, like I am desperately trying to get away from custom orders, like
Sure.
desperately, because it just bogs it down. And ultimately, like I'm not a true artist like my wife is. Like my wife is 100%. She's got artist brain through and through. Like she's got a world inside of her head that I just don't have, right?
Yeah.
And so like that type of creativity comes to me through like work and reps, not
Hmm.
necessarily through inspiration,
Right.
if that makes sense. So
It does.
I
Yeah.
think stuff like custom orders just like stops my ability to play really in kind of the same way where it's just
Yeah.
like how do I stretch my brain? How do I make myself uncomfortable to try something new?
Yeah.
And it's just like it's again, it's reps and it's doing something like not knowing how to forge well at all and then just being like fucking power hammer, like
Let's do this shit.
yeah, just fucking I'm just gonna do it. So like I think that's and then and it's the same thing. It's just like, well, I don't want to tie your hammer. Like I don't like if I like because you hear differing opinions of it. So I'm just like, fuck it, I'm buying this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get an An Yang. This is
Yeah.
what I've settled on. So then it's just making it happen. So
Yeah. I will say that weight that you've been talking about for the Anyang, if you get into Damascus making, is a great weight. I love it. When I was in Connecticut, we had the Nazel 4B, which I think it had like a 450-pound striking head,
wow.
and yeah, and it
Yeah.
was like fucking 11 feet tall, and it was like this
Yeah.
giant machine, right? I hardly ever used that thing because I
Yeah.
realized for most of the patterns I'm trying to make, it it requires a level of finesse, and
Control.
you're
There's like
not
you can
gonna get
yeah.
that finesse with a big
Mhm.
boom boom that's 450 pounds smashing
Mhm.
down. That 120, though, we had a 110 Samac, and fuck, I loved that thing. It was
Mhm.
so great. And I think that I've worked with a bunch of the Anyangs, and I really like them a lot. And I could see like a 120 being really nice for control, not only for making Damascus and controlling patterns, but and controlling the forging, but also for forging out blades, because
Yeah.
you don't want to forge a chef's knife out on a 450-pound. I mean, it can be
I
done.
mean, good luck. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I did it on a 200-pound, and that was too much. It was,
Mhm.
and I think it was also the first time I ever did it. So it was, I think you could figure it out, but at the same time, like you can have so much more finesse with a lighter hammer, a 100-ish, 120. That should
Mhm.
be pretty fucking nice for that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. It's kind of the same story. It's like I didn't know how to make knives, and I built a kiln, or I bought a kiln. So it's like I don't know how to make wood, so I forced myself to learn by buying a hammer. So
Yeah. There you go. I love it. Um, can you let's see what I think I'm trying to think of where to go next.
polishing. I know the polishing thing is always like,
Yeah, polishing is really good. Yeah, I actually saw on your Instagram, and I'll try to find the post, but you were using like a little bottle for like
oh, for like
applying like
like the clay layout. Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, and I'm trying to remember where that post was. I think it was a video. It's one of your reels. You kind of like blasting through the process a little bit.
I
Uh,
was like speeding it up. Yeah.
yeah, maybe this one. I'm not sure. But yeah, can you talk a little bit about like your process of kind of preparing the steel for hamon? Like
Yeah. So
if you're going through any kind of thermal cycling and stuff like that.
I'm doing DET anneals on everything, and I'll I get the preform of the knife, and then immediately I'll put a whole pile of steel in the even heat and just anneal shit out of it a couple times.
Yeah.
Just doing DET anneals on it, and just to like relax it, and um, that's really what I'm doing. And then I go into like a pre-grind, and I'm like before the quench, like when I'm laying up clay. I mean, you hear these things over and over and over when you're getting into this, and you're like, oh, you quench at the thickness of a dime, right? Like that's always been like stuck in my head. It's
Sure.
like a lot
Which
of
is like
people.
around 50, right? 50% of
Um,
the time? 40 maybe?
what? Hold on, I'm gonna look it up. Let me look.
40 thousandths? Around a
Nine
1 millimeter or
thousandths.
1.5.
Uh, that wasn't helpful at all. I was looking for a measurement, and it gave me how many dimes are in $1,000. And,
Sweet. Now you know.
yeah. But anyway, like everyone in the United States knows what like thickness of a dime, right? And so,
Right.
but I'm quenching at about half that.
Holy shit.
In cold oil specifically too, because I like the chaos of everything I'm doing is to do these things. Like when I say I'm trying to break them, like I am trying to break these things. You're teetering that edge,
Right.
so heavy, and which is why for a chef knife that's not unstable, but for
Yeah.
a single bevel that's like that's
That's pretty
very.
wild.
Yeah,
'Cause
it
I feel
moves a
like the
lot.
last time I mic'd a dime, it was like 30 thousandths or, maybe like closer to 40 thousandths.
I think these are that's an older one.
This
So
one,
me polishing those knives. Yeah.
yeah, it shows the polishing here, let me pop back out of it and go back in again.
I think there's
Is it
scroll
this?
up just a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it. I think it's.
'Cause that one did
Yeah, I can
start with,
recognize it. Oh,
uh,
right next to it, right there. No, yeah, there you go.
so if we zoom in here,
I think there's a. Hold on, let me see if I can't find which post it is. It's on here.
you think it's the next one? Oh, this one goes into the
Oh,
layout.
that's a long live video. That's
Okay.
like an hour long, I think. Um, I forgot when I posted it up. It was before Blade, Texas. Let's see.
I'm sorry. I feel like I just like completely derailed the conversation.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. You're good. I'm
Here,
trying to find it too
I'm gonna
because
look up
it is a good video.
I'm gonna try to pull up.
It shows the layout. Maybe not. I know it's in here somewhere, but I can't see it either.
Okay, so the thickness of a dime is so 53 thousandths of an inch or 1.35 millimeters thick. And so you're doing half that. So you're
I'm
quenching
probably
at
like 30 thou. 30 thou is probably like when I've mic'd it a couple times. Like 30
okay.
thou was probably
So about 1 millimeter then.
Yeah. And then that's the, again, it's like, how do you do that consistency on a 2x72? And I'm just like, well, that's tough. So then that's why that's where the 6x48 really kind of came in.
Yeah.
Wait, sorry. I know it's in here. I know which video you're talking about. But I can't find it either.
I'm gonna do this one more time and try to pause it.
I wonder if it was on. There was there was a really good one on Facebook. I think it might have ended up there and not my Instagram somehow.
Okay. This layout is interesting though. I've never seen anybody do this layout.
So like, if you're trying to do like a normal wavy line hamon, right? Like when people are talking about like how they're laying out clay.
Yeah.
They talk about this like symmetry, right? You're like, oh, you want it on one side exactly the same as the other side. So if you think of the two sides of the blades and the clays as like your fingers, and you're like this on both sides, you really are trying to capture the same sides.
Sure.
And so what I do I do that with layout lines to keep it consistent. But what I'm really doing is I'm offsetting those lines.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to. It's interesting. Like when you look at like finished work, you can see how the heat is moving from one side of the knife to the other, and it's kind of moving. It's kind of moving like this. So all this like activity is caught in the middle, and the solid hamon is like where your palms are overlapping.
Right.
And so that's how you're getting these like really wispy like activities, and doing this with a brush. And so this is me playing. See how it's like crosshatched like that?
Yeah.
Because if you crosshatch both sides, now you get this like bubbling that happens in the hamon above the activity lines.
Right.
So that's what the crosshatch is, and I do it that way sometimes. And then I've actually changed it up a little bit because I've found a little better result. I've got an old paintbrush, and I just like gloop it down and like press it into the blade like this, so it gives this like it's very inconsistent in terms of how the clay layout is, even more so than like the crosshatch lines. Because the cross hatching I was finding was actually showing up, and I didn't like it. So I was like, well, let me figure out how this looks. And I was like daubing it down with a paintbrush, and that's kind of my preferred way. And then with, these are cool. How you can you start peeking through, like, how do you know you got a hamon? It's when you can see it at 60 grit. So
for sure. Yeah.
And then so to draw these like little wisps to make sure that they don't overlap at the bottom, those little, they're just like little squeeze bottles for paint that I get on Amazon. Yeah, that was a really cool batch.
And so then what kind of clay are you? Oh, Jesus Christ. Look at that. Oh my God.
These are really fucking cool batch.
Oh my God.
Yeah, dude, that one on the top. Yeah.
Woo!
The cool thing is like I still have one, because I was just like, these three are so fucking cool. Oh, and so I kept one of those, and then I sold two of the other ones, but a buddy bought one of them, so I know where it is, and he's got it, and it's held up really nice, and kind of see it.
That activity is so good. Fuck, that's wild.
I know there's one. I know it's in here somewhere. I know exactly which video you're talking about too. And it shows me like drawing out the lines and laying them up.
Yeah.
But I don't, maybe Instagram deleted it. Who knows? Instagram wilding sometimes.
Yeah.
These
are now, for people listening, we're looking at, I just realized not everybody's watching the video.
This is great visual content.
For anybody not watching, you should go to the YouTube and watch it. But we're looking at some of the hamons. The activity is wild, and the polish. Now these are more finished pieces.
That one.
The polish is so good.
Yeah, I think a guy in DC owns that one. I think one of the chefs in DC has that one. This one came out really fucking cool. Honestly, it's almost as cool as making them is to see where they end up. Like, I love watching them get used, man. So
yeah. God. All right. Sorry. So I feel like I asked you what kind of clay and that I didn't hear your answer.
So here's a real just a plug, because I love this stuff. I have used, and I'm not sponsored, I don't get anything out of this, I swear, but the Daniel Daniel O'Connor makes what they call the nuclear system. And all the clay I get from him, when I'm doing annealing, he makes a coating, a clay coating for blades when you're
Yeah.
annealing, and I use that for when I'm doing my DET anneals on it. And he is sending me. Actually, I think it's at my house right now. I just haven't gotten it yet, or I haven't been home yet. But he is making a new polish
Oh.
that I'm super pumped to try. It's like an aluminum oxide suspended in a, I believe it's kind of suspended almost in a, it's not in like a paste. It's more almost like a foam in a way.
Oh,
All
interesting.
right. Almost like a lotion in a
Okay.
weird way. And it comes in these it's in these like not vacuum, but it's a plunger system from like a makeup bottle. And so one squeeze for like, they use it for like foundation, right? And so like
Okay.
one squeeze is an exacting amount. And then it's aluminum oxide suspended in it, and they're refillable. So I'm really excited to try all this, and because I was able to kind of say like, hey, this is the microns that I want to use. This is the grit that I'd prefer.
Yeah. What did you say his name was? Daniel what?
Daniel O'Connor. He's a great knife maker too. He's got dude built a spring hammer. Like, he's serious.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
O'Connor. And you said the stuff is called nuclear?
Nuclear. You can get it from most the suppliers around the United States, most of the knife making suppliers around the United States. I personally buy it from Pops because Pops is closest to me. So
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
Twin Oaks. Oh yeah, Twin Oaks. Is he Twin Oaks Forge?
Is that what his is?
Daniel O'Connor.
Let's see. I think that sounds right. Yeah, Daniel.O'Connor.Twin Oaks.
Yeah. Okay.
And so he has it's a very traditional style of clay. So a lot of people are using like Satanite, and then
Right.
Satanite falls off, right?
Yeah.
And then people are using Rutlands, and the problem with Rutlands is it falls off, and so then
Right. Yeah.
and what I was using for the longest time was Rutlands and Satanite, and I wasn't getting what I knew I could get consistently.
Sure.
And then I talked to Daniel for a long time about it, and he has this, and he kind of explained like what was missing out of all those formulas, and I've just been using his stuff forever.
Right.
I kind of know what's in it, but I don't want to spill his tea,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
here
mean,
we
I
go.
know what is in it, and he hasn't told me what's in it, but I've kind of obsessed about it enough to know what's in it. So
This is the Nuclear Systems hamon 1800.
Hamon 1800. Pops always has it in stock.
Okay.
I believe. I mean, I'm pretty sure most everyone has it. I can't say for sure Maritime has it,
Sure.
but I kind of think they do. So, and he's just like making this stuff up in his garage, and
Yeah, look at this. Just like,
he's got a pretty sophisticated system, and
that's great.
it's the stuff. It sticks. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It stays on the blade during the quench because it's such a volatile process that it just sheds clay, and but the best description I've ever heard and used of a hamon is it's like a high speed photograph of heat moving through steel.
Mm.
And it's like,
Oh, interesting.
it's like the final lap of a racehorse. Like, I mean, it's
Sure.
you have to take a bunch of photos, and you find the right one that is the one that shows the horse leaning over the edge first, right? And there's 1,000 photos before, and there's 1,000 photos after, but only one photo is really, really great. And that's what getting a really great hamon is trying to take that picture at the exact right moment and doing everything you can leading up to taking that picture.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I think one of the first hamons that I did was Rutlands, and that's because the guy I was working beside, that's what he used, and he's like, yeah, shit's cheap, and you just paint it on, and it gets a hamon. But it was not a very sophisticated hamon. It was kind of just like blobby, and again, like sometimes that's the aesthetic you're going for, but what I was looking for is a lot more along the lines of what you're getting. And I will admit, early on, I didn't know shit about hamons really, and then now I have Satanite, and I actually passed it through a 5 five thousandths inch like mesh,
Hmm.
because sometimes the Satanite can have a lot of like big clumps in it or
Hmm.
rocks or pebbles. So I kind of like smooth it out basically. But even still, it's tricky to get it like applied and get fine lines and not get it to fall off. And
So
yeah,
the
go ahead.
traditional way of making that, I don't want to interrupt, but like it's a good time to like say this. The
Yeah.
traditional way, you can take that Satanite, and this is what kind of led me down this path.
Okay.
If you take that Satanite and you take forge scale and you
Okay.
grind up forge scale into a powder and you
Yeah.
mix it and then add water to it to make a paste, it'll stick.
With the Satanite.
That
Oh,
carbon, the Satanite's an insulator, is the
yeah.
is the insulator you need, but that carbon and iron that's coming out in the forge scale will
Yeah.
make it stick.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and I've had guys that or seen pages where they're like, it has to be a certain grit for it to really stick. And yeah, and it's just like like I've fucked around with just like going straight into the kiln after
Hmm.
painting it on and just giving it a couple minutes to set up versus letting it set up overnight. And
Yeah, Daniel stuff, I hit it with a heat gun, like I mean, or you can hit it with a blowtorch,
right,
and once it's stuck, it's stuck. Like
right.
that's
You gotta
really,
like grind it off.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it is. I don't have a whole lot that. I mean, some of the wispy stuff at the end for sure comes off because it's just
Sure.
like very very small amounts, and
Yeah.
just like steel moves during the quench,
Right.
so that will shed it. But the bulk of the material it's on there, and I'm having to scrape it off with a file after quench.
Sure. Gosh, there's something else that keeps popping in my mind to ask about, and it keeps popping right back out. Um, oh, something else I've noticed about the Saint Night is that like you can't just mix it up and use it. Like you want to give it a minute because it like
Hmm.
hydrates in a way,
It's like a
and it
concrete,
yeah, and
like
it
a swell.
changes, and so
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and so that's the other thing that's kind of tricky is like you'll get it mixed up. When I first started using it, I would try to use it right away, but then I was kind of like fucking things up. Or it was changing as I had
Hmm.
to like keep adding more water and I would add too much water and it was just all this back and forth kind of fuckery and it was making what was already kind of like an ominous pain in the ass process even more
Yeah.
difficult. And then trying to get fine lines applied. Like I think the best thing I ended up doing was getting a popsicle stick and like
Trying to
grinding
drag
it
it. Yeah,
grinding it to, like, a sharp bevel almost like a chisel
yeah.
bevel on a popsicle stick, so it wasn't flat, it was around so it's had a more singular point, but also trying to figure out, like, how do you load that up with just the right amount so you don't
Mhm.
just, like, drop a blob of it right in the wrong spot and all that
That,
kinda shit.
yeah, those little applicator bottles are, I mean, they're just a paint.
Yeah,
It's a metal tipped. It's like a fine tip paint applicator bottle,
yeah,
and they gum up and they get gross, and you have to mix water and you're shaking it, and always having it. You kind of have to clear the tip, and that
yeah.
is you can. I use the like jeweler's bandsaw blades. It's
Oh,
perfect.
yeah.
It's right down in like
Oh,
those are
really?
perfect. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's perfect to fit in there and clear it, and it's got
Yeah.
enough of an edge to it that you can like really like clean the inside of them out. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm definitely sold on this new clay, so I'm gonna
Oh, the new. I mean, it just it takes all the guesswork out of it. Daniel is an obsessive human being too, so the consistency from batch to batch is always spot on.
yeah,
If I let it dry out, I just add a little water to it, and it's fine. It
sure.
works perfect. So
Um Something that often happens that I feel like isn't really discussed a lot is the reverse sorry.
what do you mean? I mean,
So
know what that is and not know what
so
it's called.
in Japanese bladesmithing, when they make the sword, they quench the blade. The blade is
Oh yeah,
straight,
yeah, yeah.
and when they quench it, but then in the hardening, it swoops up.
Hmm.
So what often happens though on knives, and it might be because of the thin cross section, or I don't know what exactly, but it actually does a reverse sorry. It actually goes the other way.
It never comes back up.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it goes yeah, sorry. So Japanese blades, they go down from straight, they go down and then they finish up. Where on yeah, knives, they don't come back up. And again, I don't know if that has something to do with thermal mass or what, but
I
um
think. I think it like, I mean, clearly, from a traditional standpoint, a hamon was a very functional thing,
Right.
like in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And then that goes back forever, right? Like that was the original. The hamon was kind of the original way to put a soft back on a hard edge, and it's kind of a brilliant thing that they figured it out. It's kind of a wonder that they figured it out. And then as their layering of steels progressed over time, the hamon became decorative for
Right.
the most part, because they're laying in mild steel in the back of that,
Yeah.
jacket of what a traditional like katana or whatever would be.
Sure.
And so um, I see it happen with like a suji, right? Like something, a long slicer.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you don't have enough clay on the back, you get I will get a reverse sorry. So I think that like that insulator is helping it bring it back up.
Interesting.
Because I've talked about it with like Bauer, to an extent, but at some point, is this clay insulating or is it adding heat? Like, because what, like where,
Sure.
because I mean the clay is just as hot as the steel when you're pulling it out.
Right.
So is the steel a conductor of losing heat, and the clay is bleeding heat back into the steel?
Well, I think that's definitely part of the constant considerations you got to think about, right?
Yeah, and then I think part of that is what's driving, like pulling it back.
Interesting.
I don't know, because I mean, none of this is like, I mean, how the fuck do you study this? Because I mean, I can make 20 of them that I feel like I can mic them and make 20 of them that are exactly the same and try to do the same layout and do them one at a time in the same temperature oil. They're not the same.
Right.
You know, there's so much variation in how that like crystalline structure is like stopping, and when does it stop?
Right. That's so interesting. Well, and what was the other thing? God, my brain. I don't know what's going on. I keep blanking on. I like have something I want to say and then I blank on it. But yeah, the reverse. We were talking about reverse sorry. Well, yeah, the thickness of the clay and
the thickness. I mean, the spine is clearly holding more heat and is probably dragging it back up. Because I mean, yeah, when you're quenching, like everything's retracting, everything's pulling in tighter.
Sure.
And then at like some point that the thickness of the spine like lets it relax and it brings everything back up.
Yeah, well, and I'm just realizing too, I wonder if it's a difference because I know that the structure of martensitic steel is a larger, at least I think this is what I've come to understand, is that it is a larger structure, atomically speaking, than unhardened.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the edge is exposed and
Mm-hmm.
hardening fully while the rest of the blade isn't, or especially the spine is insulated, then that means it's not transforming into martensite. It's some sort of pearlite, and so that would make sense why the edge would possibly want to come back up. But if not enough is on there, then why it wants to do, I don't know, reverse sorting.
Yeah, it may not have the thermal mass to like for that.
That's another great question for Larry Thomas.
Yeah, great question. And he's like, I'm trying to make MagnaCut. My boys are going out of business. Like, you know,
right.
So,
he's a little preoccupied with that right now.
Oh, they just announced that a group of investors are buying it and keeping it open.
Yeah. No, I just saw Laren's post.
Yeah. Oh, did Laren post? I think I saw it somewhere. Maybe it was him that posted it, but they've got a group of investors that are keeping Crucible alive, which is really, I mean, it's cool, man. I mean, it's like American made steel, you know?
Right. Yeah. So the thing I forgot, oh my God, did I lose
You've
it
just
again?
been repeating it in your head.
Just remember it. Oh yeah, is about the misconception of insulating, because I think a lot of people, they'll hear that and they'll say, oh, okay, so it's keeping the blade from getting hot, but what it's actually doing is keeping the blade, the spine or the places covered with clay, they're keeping that hot while the rest of the blade is cooling quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
it's not keeping heat away, it's keeping it in.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's something. So yeah, it's holding the heat in rather than keeping it out, and that was something that was a misconception I had initially when I first was learning about hamons because I thought I was keeping the heat out, but but
That's where like at least this thing is where it's keeping the heat in,
yeah,
and then so when you're after the quench and you're pulling everything out, like the clay is probably hotter than the steel.
yeah,
And so is it like
absolutely,
then it's like leading now it's pushing heat back into the steel. So
yeah,
it becomes this weird like I think there's just all these like weird considerations to get a significant amount of activity in these
yeah.
things.
Well, and if you think about it, so parts of the blade that are exposed are transforming the martensite, but if that heat from the clay is allowed to the retained heat from the clay bleeds back in, then what you'll start to get is tempered martensite or possibly even over tempered
Oh
martensite.
yeah, that's
And how
true.
does that affect?
Yeah.
It is transformed to martensite, but then by basically over tempering, because we will normally temper around like 400 degrees or so, but if the clay is still like 1,000
Scalding hot.
degrees,
Yeah.
then that's definitely going to have an effect on that martensite that it is directly adjacent to. And
Which
how
makes
does that
sense a lot.
affect the pattern?
Well, which absolutely makes sense because that's how the crazy thing is that's only happening at the surface.
Right.
Because I know for a fact if you break a hamon, the cross section in the hamon is not straight. It's not
Oh,
straight through
sure.
side to side. It's like a parabola. Like
Yep.
it moves up. So that which is why you lose so
You and your
much.
smart words.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah.
I'm just saying words. Yeah.
No, you're right. It's parabola.
Yeah, I saw a joke the other day. It's like my knowledge of parabolas over time, and it's just a parabola. It's like officially I knew a lot. It fell off.
Oh my god,
the
that's hilarious.
so the but like that's why you lose activity in the grind because a hamon is completely it's not completely surface level, but the ashi or the little
Oh
wispiness
yeah.
is 1,000% surface level. It does not go side to side. I mean, really, I just need to break one of these things and send it to Laren. I
Yeah.
really just need to, because that would be the interesting thing is to have like, hey, this is what this looks like, highly polished and completely done, which is why it sucks to do this.
Oh, yeah.
This is what it looks like, highly polished,
Yeah.
completely done. This is where we're cutting cross sections, and this is what these cross sections look like.
Yeah. This would be a fucking pain in the ass to do, but I follow like because of Damascus patterns and stuff. I
Mhm.
follow a bunch of polymer clay designers.
The girls that make the flowers and the leaves out of polymer clay blow my mind. I love it.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, go on.
So what I've been seeing is now they'll make like a loaf.
Yeah.
And often that's what they do anyways, and then they lay it out and stuff. They cut
Mhm.
it up and they put it back together. But there are these people making these loaves that are almost like this transformational animation. So they'll take a slice off and
Yeah.
they'll pull it away and they'll take a
Mhm.
picture and they'll cut a slice off, pull it away, take a picture, and they do that throughout the whole length. And the thing changes and transforms as you pass down the depth of it. And part of me is like, how could you do that with a hamon? That would be such a pain in the ass because basically you'd have to figure out a fixture of some sort to put it back in the exact same place every single time, but you'd have to take it out, grind a little bit off, etch
Mhm.
it, and then dry it off, and then put it back in there, take a picture, take it out, grind a little bit off, and keep,
That would
but just
yeah.
like from tip all the way down
And
the
watch what
depth of
that
the
internal structure of the martensite looks like if you
and
buy
and
one.
and also so have kind of like up in the corner have like an off angle look so you can see or get a view of what kind of activity and how it
Mhm.
relates to that particular cross section. If there's a bunch of ashi, or how far down is the ashi, how deep is that in the
Mhm.
cross section of the blade, that'd be fucking cool. But it also would be a fucking pain in the ass.
Yeah, because I mean, it's essentially taking an extraordinary piece of work and being like, bye bye.
Bye, let's turn this into dust, baby.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it is like it's
Sounds like a
definitely
project for
something.
Alex Steele.
Yeah, there you go. That's a whole YouTube series. Yeah.
Yeah, Alex.
Fuck. I'm gonna start my YouTube channel tomorrow.
I'll edit that out. We'll just
I gotta monetize this baby. But everything's content. So but I mean that's kind of the hope with talking with Laren about this is like, hey, I like not only am I interested just to see what it looks like inside, because I can break a knife and tell you kind of what it looks like. You can see it. You can see the structure and how it changes. And I can, squint and look real close and I can see how like this patterning is changing on the edge. But to be able to take 60 cuts,
right,
and then ask him to, because they have to polish the edge. I mean, it has to be polished, and then it has to be etched, and then it has to be put under, whatever they're using to take a picture of it, whatever microscope they're using to take a picture of it.
Well, and maybe that's the trick, is that it's a microscope connected to a camera, and that the camera, none of that moves. It's just you every time you cut and clean a new surface, you're butting it up to some flat surface, so it's always zoomed into the exact same focal point every time, and then that way it can be a little bit off like in orientation, but that flat surface is always butted up against a piece of glass or something that the photograph is being taken through. That would probably be the way to do it. That would make it a lot less of a pain in the ass, actually.
Right. I mean,
make it a lot easier. It would also just have like a little clamp underneath that you just
to see that structure change throughout it'd be a really fucking cool video.
That would
just to watch the structure change.
Yeah. Well, and especially if you can do it under a video microscope, so you can really see that. Yeah, because you can see, and it would be. Then the question is like, well, what kind of acid do you use that really helps to show the crystalline structure, the difference between the martensite and the perlite, and the in-betweens and the mixed structures.
Sure.
Yeah. And
then how it looks at the surface.
Yeah.
Of the knife in comparison to what it looks internally.
Right.
Yeah. It'd be. Yeah. I'll talk to Laren again.
That'd be cool. That would be cool. But yeah, having somebody that has the ability to take those pictures, that is the tricky part.
Because I don't think that's a cheap microscope.
No, well, and probably every once in a while, at a certain there, I'm sure there will be particularly interesting cross sections that have quite a array of different structures or mixtures of structures that are worth kind of like zooming in and getting a little bit closer look on, but probably not the whole thing.
And I'd be really interested to see how deep some of the activity is actually into the cross section of the steel.
Yeah.
And watching how that plays out. And also there's probably an argument that what activities in the steel that you can't see.
Right.
Because there's probably something going on there. I don't know. As it's transferring halfway off, because that's the other thing that I'm interested in, because I have my feelings is that what you're seeing on the opposite side is kind of a shadow from the other side, where it's
sure,
the clay is over here, but where you're seeing it is actually on this side of the knife, and that's why this offset is changing, because you're seeing I'm seeing the results of the clay from this side over here. And
well, and you must see that when you do
how far is it coming through?
Sure. When you're doing a single bevel, are you doing clay on both sides or just on one side?
On both sides.
You are doing on both sides. Okay.
And that's I've tried it on.
Do some weird shit,
dude. I've tried it on. I tried it on one side and it was a banana. Yeah, it was.
Just curled right over.
One, so.
Yeah. Shit. Okay. So. It still boggles my mind that you're heat treating, you're hardening the blade at 20 or 30 thousandths.
It's probably 30,000. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pushing it. That's pretty.
Oh, I mean, I waffle them, I break them, they break. Yeah. It for sure happens, but it is.
They turn into bacon.
It should, 100%. Lots of bacon in the shop. There's lots of bacon in the shop.
Sizzled bacon.
For a while, I was keeping them, and then the bucket filled up, and I was just like, well, there's no reason to keep these things. So,
you got to turn them into wind chimes. Just ding, 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 all these fucking knives out there.
I mean, that's honestly, that's probably that would be a great gallery. If my work was ever in a gallery, having my failures turned into a wind chime is
or
probably
like a mobile of some sort.
Yeah, like a mobile. Yeah. That would be honestly would be depressing.
Yeah. Just like, well, and I don't know. But it depends on the perspective that you're looking at. You could see it, you could name it growth.
Oops. Yeah.
Oops.
Well, I mean,
I learned something.
it is a crazy thing to see that, like, a bucket full of failures that ended up to be this one thing.
Sure.
Just one thing. Like all that, like, all the thing. Bob was also Bob Kramer. He comes by every time at Blade Show too, because he always he nitpicks the shit out of my knives, which I fucking love.
So, he does.
Yeah. I love it. Bob's also, I feel like, a good bullshit meter. If you say something that he doesn't agree with, he's like, okay.
yeah. He doesn't say a whole lot.
He doesn't argue it. He's just like, hey,
like,
okay.
That's an interesting idea.
Nice, interesting. Yeah. That's interesting. But but he was talking about that too. And he asked me, he's like, how many of these things break? And I was like, a lot. Yeah, it was funny.
That's great. Have Bob come by. I'm sorry. We were talking at one point earlier about how you prepare the steel, and you said you put it through a couple DET anneals using the Daniel also has a product that's like a coating while you're exposing the steel, which I think is freaking great, because there are times where I want to do heat treatment processes and thermal cycling, but the constant like I've not had good success with foil. I have foil, but I have not had good success with foil in that there's always like a tiny pinhole somewhere and shit gets all
you're like trying to
anyway.
This edge and
just like, God damn. So having a clay coating like that would be really great, I think. Yeah. And so you talked about how you do a couple DET anneals, and then do you go straight into hardening from there? Or do you start with normalizing and then go through the DET anneals, or?
Yeah, it's doing the DET anneals, and then it is cleaning all that off to get to bare steel again.
Yeah.
And making sure it's
okay,
just like,
so you make sure that any decarb material is
off.
Yeah,
decarb's got to get all off. I mean, it's not a whole lot.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's not a whole lot through through like annealing cycle. There's not a ton, but it is there.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to get all of that out, which isn't a ton. That's why I'm doing all my annealing cycles at full thickness. So I'm just taking straight bar stock. Just
you're starting with like quarter inch or like 3/16 or
no, it's like it'll work with like 3/32 like W2. If I'm trying to batch them out or something like that, I'm doing like 3/32. I kind of prefer 3/32 steel for a chef knife.
I got you. Yeah.
It's what I'm used to. I don't know if there's no logic behind it. It's just kind of what I've always done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless it's into like single bevels, which are like, much thicker at the spine because you just need that mass.
Right.
But I'm starting at like 1/8 inch is probably a better starting point.
I see.
And actually this last batch of steel, I didn't buy any 3/32. I just bought 1/8 inch and 3/16 and some 4 mil, some bigger stuff.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I started from it. And then so I'm doing full thickness DET annealing and DET annealing cycles, cleaning all of that off to make sure there's no decarb. Usually there's not, but just cleaning it off to get good clean steel.
Yeah.
I'm putting in my initial bevels. I'm getting that to like that 30, 40 thou, like, whatever, 30 thou ish edge thickness, making sure my bevels are nice and flat and consistent and even, which is a big thing. Cause if, when you're quenching that thin, it moves a lot. Like your steel wants to move a lot if it's inconsistently ground.
Yeah.
Which is that's probably been the hardest like learning curve of doing this whole thing is key and exercise and consistency.
Yeah.
And then
real quick, what grit are you grinding them to? 120?
Like 120. Yeah. 120. 120 is my favorite. 120. Yeah, 120 is my favorite. But I love using a 120 belt. Like low key, I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty sweet.
But then I like 120s because every 220 sucks. I hate 220. So.
Yeah, sure.
It's like the last good belt. so I'm getting up to 120, drawing my layout lines kind of how I want them, just depending on what I'm going after. So,
Yeah.
And then I heat treat cold oil. Like it's almost late for me to be doing heat treating. Like I try to do 30 and 40 knives at a time in the winter because I like cold oil.
Yeah.
I think you just get a better vapor jacket around it, which I think adds to kind of the chaos.
There's so many variables. So that's interesting. So you got the variables of the thickness of the steel, and the variable of the kind of clay you're using, the medium you're quenching in, the temperature of the medium. Using the vapor jacket, it sounds like somewhat to your advantage.
And then doing an interrupted quench
right
by feel. Like you can't time it. You have to like
once it vibrates at a certain frequency,
you can feel it. You can feel the vibration stop, and then I'm pulling it.
Yeah.
But I don't want a fireball. Like so, I'm definitely trying not to get a fireball blow up in my face, or I just don't think it's good for the overall hardening. And then I'm pulling it out, counting to 2, and then back in.
Right.
And then also trying not to break them. And I'm quenching in Parks 50, so there's that's another thing that usually everyone's like, oh, you're water quenching. And I was like, I'm not really water quenching at all. I've done some water quenching, but it's all oil. Yeah.
Well, but like I said, I think all those different variables, especially the blade thickness and the kind of and the clay and the thickness of the clay, like all of that, and the temperature of the oil, those all like even those, if you just take those 3 variables into consideration, like the blade thickness, that affects the thermal mass. That also affects how quickly it cools. You're working with sub 1/8 inch. That's gonna cool pretty fucking quickly,
pretty fast. Yeah.
Which now I understand better why like you're potentially getting interesting activity that starts on one side, but it's actually the shadow of that activity is on the other side
because it cools so fast.
Yeah.
Like like I find 330-second material really easy to get an active hamon.
Yeah.
It's really easy to break them because they're already thin. But it's easier to get like crazy activity on those than it is to get on a single bevel.
Yeah.
Like I've got, I don't know, 15, 20 single bevels ready for clay they'll get quenched sometime in the next week or 2.
Yeah.
So, and they're a nightmare. So
sure.
Well, and no one buys them. No one wants to fucking buy them. I don't know why I'm making them. No one wants to buy these things, but like they're just like, I'm doing it. Here I go. So
wait, what do you mean nobody wants to buy them?
It's such a you guys were talking about it on Knife Talk this week, where it's like, every American they want a fucking Swiss Army knife. They want the knife that does everything. They want one thing that does everything. And traditional Japanese cooking is they have a knife for everything.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. Like, cause it shows how it's really cool because it shows like how dedicated they are to a single task, which I kind of love. I love like specialized tooling. And so that's the thing. But then if I'm trying to sell a $1,000 plus single bevel, if someone's in the market for $1,000 single bevel, they're going to Japan. They're not buying it from an American maker. So, I mean, I do all right with them, but it's more of it's a flex is really what it is. Like it's where it is. It's just a flex. So I've got
challenging to make.
Yeah. So it's a flex just to show that I can do it. And then I have a set for Blade Show. I'm working on a set of 7 single bevels, and it's like a takohiki. It's a takohiki, a yanagaba, fugihiki, deba, morioshi deba, and a honosuke, and a I can't remember the name of it, but it's the takohiki that's long and like curved saber shape, whatever they call it. But, yeah. So it's just a flex. It's just like fucking look. It's like, look what I did. That's all it is. It's the only reason.
They're super cool.
Yeah.
I remember
how much is that? I'm like $12,000. So like,
you better know what you're doing.
Yeah. But it honestly is this like, it's a teetering between like art and functionality. So that's really why I want to do it. So
well, and I think that, I mean, to be fair, like that's what custom knives, in my mind, that's what they should be. They
It's
should
art.
be,
Yeah.
yeah. Because once we've gone beyond the functionality of the thing as a tool,
Hmm.
now we're dabbling in artistry. Like,
Yeah, and that's tough because
yeah,
like I mean there's a there are chef knives and there are chef knife shaped objects,
sure.
and
Yeah.
I was very guilty of making chef knife shaped objects for a long time.
Okay.
And I got my head like I got my not kicked in, but I got brutalized by
Okay.
like an actual expert, and I'm not gonna like we're friends. Like she and I are like we're now friends,
Yeah.
and she was like, "This is exactly what's wrong with your stuff," and I was like, "Oh," and then it's all changed. Like
Yeah.
it's just taking that feedback and being like, "Okay, cool." But now it's someone I can send something to, and I was like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And I can
Right.
get like great feedback. So,
Yeah.
which is why I like retailers so much, because these chef knife retailers are just
Sure.
uh, crazy. Number one, but two, it's they know their shit in most
Yeah.
cases. They really do. They live it, breathe it, and work it, and talk about it every single day
Yeah.
in a different way that we do as a maker.
Yeah. Well, and I think having those conversations, even though like you just railed off like a bunch of names, and most all of those knives, I knew what you're like, I could visualize what you're saying, but I guarantee you that there aren't a lot of people who understood all the different names that you were saying,
Yeah,
and being able to visualize what those knives are. Though most people have seen them,
yeah,
have connecting those names to the actual things is tricky, but that's part of that education and striving to have a deeper understanding rather than making a thing that's shaped like a
mhm,
honeski or something like that, or a
yeah,
takahiki. Instead of trying to make a thing that looks like it's shaped like that, and therefore somebody has to try to like make the jump in an assumption that it should perform like one, versus actually having a deeper understanding of the form follows the function, and there's a
yeah,
specific reason why it's shaped
mhm,
and contoured and ground to the particular blade thick or heights and lengths and thicknesses and bevel angles and all of those things. All of that plays a role, especially in Japanese single bevel style knives. Like you said, every process has a knife designed to do
mhm,
that process, versus in a west, which is the eastern approach. Western is more one, like, yeah, one knife to do it all.
yeah,
The Swiss
yeah.
Army knife.
I want to lop the head off a fish and cuts and brunoise. Like,
Exactly.
it needs to do both.
Oh, that's so funny. I'm
Dude,
just like, I think I know who you're talking about, the purveyor that you were referring to. She's
yeah,
a kick in the pants.
yeah, in the best way possible.
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
Um, okay, so you get the blade hard, and now you have to grind it and polish it.
yeah. Hmm.
And it sounds like 120 is your favorite, but you must be. Are you going because the blade's already so thin? Are you even starting at like 36 or 60 grit?
Oh no, no, no!
Are you
I'm
going?
out of the quench at 120. I'm out of the quench of the 120 belt.
Okay, so you
Um,
pick up where you left off.
yeah, I pick up where I left off at a 120 to get decarb off. And
Yeah,
the second I know that I am through every ounce of decarb,
yeah,
it changed. I'm probably 220 after that. I very quickly get to a 220 belt,
yeah,
and it's really why like I've switched that like 6x48, because I can get VSM ceramic belts in a 6x48, and they're fucking amazing.
yeah,
And they're the same price. But just the real estate that you have, like a 2x72 platen is what, 2 inches by 9 inches,
yeah.
maybe. This
Right,
this 6x48 platen is 6 inches by 21 inches.
right.
Like, I mean, I can do jumping jacks on the thing. Like, there's so much room to like move around. And
What's the
um,
kind of grinder again?
Rikon 6x48. I'm trying to get Casey at Lynn Valley to design me one from the ground up, and we have some ideas. So
Yeah,
we're working on it.
I
Yeah,
remember you guys talking about that. Let's see images. I'm just pulling up an image. But
yeah,
yeah,
you're
go
good.
ahead. So you're using the 6x48 to get, especially on the single bevels or even on the
All night.
symmetrical.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so I can, because like again, this notion of yeah. I've got the one on the stand,
Yeah.
that one, and
Let
so
me get
I've
this
I've
image.
taken that thing completely apart and pulled the wheel off the edge to cut down on rotational mass. Like that thing with
Right.
a VFD is like my dream come true. Is really what I
Yeah,
want.
I gotcha.
But like there's like a super tough thing is like thinness behind the edge.
Yeah,
And it's a nightmare to do on a vertically oriented 2x72 in a lot of ways.
it
I mean, you
is.
can get good at it, and clearly a lot of people have gotten good at it, but I'm lazy. I want results now. So like,
Sure.
if I can't get results now, then I need to find the tool that will give me those results now. And that's
Right.
kind of how I'm thinking about it.
For me, the trick has been, and it's tricky because you're kind of grinding blind, but grinding edge down
Yeah,
to get
yeah.
that thinness.
And then, but that's like the terrifying part of me is grinding blind. So like
Yeah.
the good news with that thing is I can lay the whole thing down, and
Right.
then you get really great flat bevels and these like this defined shinogi line that
Sure.
a lot of like Japanese chef knife users like really like.
Yeah.
So I mean that's there, and then that 6x48's been like really interesting. Yeah, there's some activity. There's some that 6x48's been really good. But I'm like, hey, how do I take this to like 800 grit? And every 800, there's not an 800 grit belt in the world that I think is really all that great. There's 600s, no, either 400s is maybe.
Right.
But like really like the functionality of like a belt driven abrasive probably kind of stops at about 220 for a really great way. Which is why I ordered these stones. So I've got these like garnet impregnated stones that are 16 inches across, 16 inches across and 2 inches thick.
Wow.
And I'm running on top of a pottery wheel, which is like this like
Yeah.
combination of like my wife's hobby and mine.
Yeah.
So I'm running them off the top of a pottery wheel, and then I can do these big flat bevels up to however high I can get a stone made.
Sure.
And then I never have to buy belts. It's an expensive stone, but then it cuts the cost of belts. So.
Do you have any relationship with John Broida at Japanese Import? He's down in LA. I would be curious to see what he thought about your work. He's a fucking serious Japanophile.
Yeah. I know
I don't think
he was in Don's video, right?
Yeah.
I know who he is. He and I don't know each other.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, I'd be curious his take on your work because he's very knowledgeable in the Japanese made knives, and I think honestly he could really help the knife industry move in a better direction in regards to accuracy of design and manufacture of knives in the Japanese style, especially around single bevels. But I don't know how amenable he is to it because I don't think he dislikes American makers, like or he's not a Japanophile in the way that he's just like fuck all American thing. Like he just like they're not there, so he doesn't sell any American made. But it's like it's gonna like I think it would be cool if American makers got to that level, and I think there are definitely some who are there. But to get more to that point, I think we're gonna need somebody like John to help with that deeper understanding we were talking about earlier of that particular style. But I don't know. I'd be curious what his take was on that stuff.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 browser windows open.
Yeah.
in like Chrome right now. Yeah. And every last one of them is related to how do I get a 1,000 millimeter grinding wheel? Because like that's because there's something to that. There's a reason why it's done in these like big production houses over there, and it's the amount of material they remove and how they remove them, and just how you can apply pressure and how you can that's the whole thing. The whole thing with a lot of Japanese knives is just this thinness behind the edge and the stability of the steel. Yeah. And it's tough. And so like if I'm talking about like, hey, what would my greatest escalation of my work be? And it would be like a Wootz single bevel that's polished by like Ivan, over in the guy in the big bald white guy in Japan that does all these like stone polishing knives that are out there, because you can see a hamon without etching it if you do it right, if you
Right.
polish it right. That's what knocks my lid back. So I mean, it is like it's like, how deep down this rabbit hole do you go?
Well, and I know that they're not etching the blades to get the hamon the pop, but I do think that there is either an alkaline, a high
In
over
the
alkaline,
stone, yeah.
or over acidic quality to the stone that is
Mhm.
helping to bring that hamon out,
Yeah.
that they don't really talk about. They just make it
It's
seem like they're just rubbing it on stones, and it's like some magic. It's like, yeah, I mean, you can polish it, you could mirror polish it, but
there's
it's not the same as even the slightest bit of exposure to some sort of acid
mhm.
brings out all kinds of different activity that you just cannot see
These
in
like
just a fully mirror polished blade.
these like Uchimagori like finger stones, like that's a secret, like that. Like there's something about like where those stones come from and something like that. And actually, like Daniel O'Connor, who made he's a nut about these things too, kind of in the same
Okay.
way that I am. So like it's fun to like deep dive with him.
Yeah.
But he's the one that says it. He's like no, these Uchimagori stones for sure have some kind of acidic property to them to bring it out, because you can polish it on stones all day long and you won't see it. But the second you get to this like hand finishing stage, you start seeing it. So
Yeah.
it's interesting, man. Like, I mean, it's just like, but again, it's like, how far do you take it? And at what point is it? I mean, it's functional art, but what's first?
Sure.
Yeah. That's the whole like eating tools thing. Like
Yeah.
I've been knocking on Abe's door forever and it hadn't happened yet, but it will.
What?
Yeah. Not yet.
I'm gonna text his ass right now.
No, they sent me a very nice email on my last one, and I think their year is just full in terms of like what they're trying to do and the makers they're trying to launch and all this stuff. And it is, Damascus is a trend. I'm kind of doing something that's not as, that's not as much of a trend currently. So.
Sure. Well,
But
and I guess
yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, he is doing a different thing, and I've got a ton of respect for him. I've had a conversation with him. He's a great guy. It's just it's just different. It's just a different thing. One day it'll be there. I'm not gonna let it fucking go. I'll get there. So, it's just a matter of getting there. So
yeah. Are there other makers that you see who are doing Japanese style work, or who are making more traditional Japanese style knives that you really are digging? One person I can think of right off the top of my head is Shihan Prul, or Shahan Knives.
I don't know.
I'll pull it up while you list off some names. But who are some people that you're seeing?
It's funny, man. Like I don't find a lot of inspiration in knife makers, which sounds funny. I mean, there's clearly people that are doing things that I admire and that like I do. And I'm not saying this from like an ego perspective of like what I'm doing is better, because it's not in any way, shape, or form. But like I find inspiration in just different, in different things, Like I think we touched on it briefly, but like pipe makers, like I'm obsessed with pipe makers. And also I'm like frustrated because there's fucking secretive little squirrels, they like hiding everything they do, and nothing's ever on video, and all these like pamphlet, because it's a very traditional like passed down thing. So I mean, you got to kind of like put in the reps before you start finding out what they're doing. And
for sure,
like, I really love the artificery Will Brigham Brighton. Like I love his handle work.
Sure.
I love how obsessed he is with creating stainless Damascus in his garage.
Right.
I love these like giant, like he's another like tool nerd where he'll go out and create tools. He's got this like quench tank thing that he was doing that's wild to me. It's like multiple different temperatures, and it's just really fucking cool,
Yeah.
Oliver from OEL Knives, like is like his knives are so modern,
right,
where they're very like the way they're assembled and put together, and he's a master of fit and finish.
Yeah.
Like the experience of buying one of his knives has to be great because the
Yeah.
packaging, everything is dialed in. He does a really great job with that. Gullickson knives. Do you know
Oh
this guy?
yeah. Eric,
Yeah,
I met him when I was in Ireland last June.
dude. Like he's going to be in. I think he's coming out to Austria, and
Oh yeah.
he's like, you and I need to have coffee. And I was like, yes, we do.
He's
So
a
I think
great
we're going
dude.
to try to
He's
get
from
coffee.
Chicago.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what he said. Yeah, I mean, he grew up
I
in
didn't know he's from
Chicago.
America. So yeah.
Yeah, and he moved to Ireland when he was young, like in his late teens or something like
Mm.
that, maybe early 20s. And he's been there since. His family and everything, like he's got married and he's got kids.
Yeah.
And they're all there, and it's interesting talking to him because he definitely has an Irish accent, but some of the words he says sound like there's no
Very
accent. I'm like,
yeah,
where?
yeah.
I was like, what? I was like, where are you from?
He, I mean, he's a cool one. I find inspiration in how he finds inspiration because he's very like his textures. Like I'm obsessed with the textures that he gets in his knives, and honestly, like Jeff's colors. I love the way Jeff uses color, so I find inspiration in Jeff using color, and then like
Jeff Fader.
Alfredo. Yeah, Alfredo's like fit and finish and his blade design and how he like interacts with the community and just like how great of a human he is to other makers. Like I wouldn't be here today without Alfredo.
Yeah.
Full stop. Like without question. He is a dear friend to me, you know? And then, I mean, I know I'm missing people, but, rock chop blades. Like this guy in England that's like, he just does traditional stone polishing. Like he's become a friend. Like,
cool.
Like Frankie Allo, who does the kitchen knife guy he does all the like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's obsessed about kitchen knives, and like he's very kind to makers. So you know his like how he views this community is inspiring. You know, so that like those are that's the stuff that I really love, and that's how I find inspiration is through stuff like that.
For sure, that's great. Yeah, a lot of those guys, especially Eric Gullickson. It was really cool to meet him in person, and it was funny when I met him. And it's just like being at Blade Show. Like you meet people, you get their real name, but it's hard to like know if you don't know the handle. Like we really should have tags that say
what my Instagram is. Yeah,
my @ is.
yeah.
Instead of my name is and all that. But yeah, it was once I realized who he was and that I had been following his work, I was like, oh fuck yeah, I know I've seen your work. It's real. And he honestly, like even just in the last year, I feel like he's really accelerated in really developing his own style and aesthetic. That's really nice. It's really cool.
There was these, it's a very refined version of like brutalism to me in terms of like what he's doing, but it's also very inspired by nature, which I really love. Like he'll have like there was a thing not too long ago where it's like he had a piece of seaweed and he's like, how do I get this texture in a knife? And he did it, and it he shows like a side by side of it, and I love how he like stretches dimensions too, like the way his like the angles and the lines of his work are kind of stretched in a way are really cool.
Right.
Max at Majime knives, like his like obsession with like how it cuts is really inspiring.
Sure.
You know, just like what is the escalation of performance in a knife? Like it's really cool. So like I love, that's the stuff that I love. But Oliver's up there, Yale's up there. Hazenberg knives is like every handle looks like an HR Geiger piece to me. Like I just love it.
Sure. Yeah. So much texture, so many different curves, so many different lines.
Yeah. It's that's the stuff that I just really, really love.
Yeah.
It's fun. And because like I feel like I can incorporate what they're doing into my work without it looking like a copy. That's kind of how because if I feel like if I only look at Japanese knives all day, I end up making exactly what they're making. So I intentionally kind of like
Right.
I kind of intentionally try to like remove myself from doing exactly what I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
to change it up. I mean, Salem Straub's a fucking wizard. Like all you guys are doing like these like crazy. I mean, all I've been doing is looking at the background of this like Artisans of Steel thing the whole time we've been talking, just like looking at the detail.
Oh,
And
the pattern.
yeah, the fact that that's steel. That's a picture of steel, right? Like
Yeah.
like that shit like blows my lid back. Like it's really cool.
Yeah.
Like because I can't even math my way out of making Damascus and pattern steel. I can't. It is so alien to me. I just can't. I feel like it's another rabbit hole. So.
Well, and I think I take it to a point that maybe it doesn't need to be taken to for sure sometimes. But yeah, I think like the class I'm going to be teaching at Blade Show is material conservation, especially for Damascus.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, Jesus. Because so many times, especially when I was first starting out, I was just guessing. I'd make Damascus. I'd spend either a day making random pattern or 4 days making some crazy mosaic, and then I'd randomly cut off a chunk and be like, well, I hope this is enough. And either it was too much or it's too little. It was never really like just the accurate amount. And I eventually got to the point with all this guesswork that I got kind of into a range, but it was only for a specific size knife. Because when I went to go do, instead of like a 8.5 inch or 8 3/4 inch knife or something like that, then I had to do a 10 inch. I would just randomly cut off another chunk and then forge way too big of a fucking knife and be like, shit. And then I'd have to do it over, or either I'd have to waste the material, cut it away, or if it wasn't enough material again, then I'd have to start over. I'd set that knife down and start over, and that was becoming a real drag. And then I had this idea of breaking down the knife into basic geometric shapes and then doing the math for the volume and then transposing that volume to the material that I'm working from. And then it worked. And it's not a hard and fast rule, it's a guideline, but it really has helped me to conserve my material in a big way and get more out of my material. Because sometimes especially if the steel has to go through multiple forging processes, cutting and stacking and rewelding, all that shit, you get down to the end and you have maybe 2 chances to make that knife. And so
like that's yeah, I can't even. It's such a, I don't know. It's weird because like, Damascus feels so alien to me. Like it really is like, it feels alien to me because I have no idea what the fuck you guys are doing. Like
just hot, heavy Play-Doh is all it is.
Yeah.
Really.
A hot, heavy. That's a really good way to put it. But yeah, I mean, you say you take it to a level that it doesn't meet, but isn't that like the ultimate? That's for you, right? Like that's
yeah.
Like,
well,
am I gonna do this? I don't want to do this for anyone else. I want to do this for me.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, it's a really fun one.
Well, before we've gone 2.5 hours already. Before we end the show, I would think it would be because what was that after? Jeez, I'm so ADHD right now. I would like to talk about polishing. We at the end of the Damasteel Invitational hung out with Casey and a bunch of other guys, but mostly the conversation was around like what you're doing for polishing as well as grinders, and I think it would be something that I think a lot of people would really get a lot of value about. And I think, and you have posted on your Instagram in a couple places how you're using I can't even remember the name of the little tool,
multi-tool.
Yeah, but using it to polish, and it's still something I haven't stepped into yet, but I want to. I'm enamored by it, and I want to step in that direction sooner than later.
Well, first and foremost, I did not invent this. So, like, I mean, I'm not the guy that started. Like, Alfredo showed me how to do it. Like, I mean,
I think Alfredo is actually one of the first people I ever saw do it.
And Alfredo does it better than me. Like, Alfredo really, really does a good job with this.
Oh shit.
And and it's not just for hamons. Like the
Right.
way, like Damasteel, stainless. Like
Yeah.
if you do this, like I'm doing a big batch of like RWL 34,
Okay. Yeah.
because I'm just like, well, I need a mono stainless, right? And if I'm going to
Yeah.
do a mono stainless, like I want to do one that's pretty. And if you polish up like RWL to a real high level, who, you know, shout outs to Trevor at he makes the straight razor guy, the bald guy
Okay.
with little tiny glasses.
Yeah.
Wolf blades,
Yeah.
wolf razors. If you polish RWL 34 to a real high extent, it's blue. It's fucking gorgeous. Yeah.
What? Okay. I
Yeah.
gotta pull that up.
There's
Wolf blade or
is
wolf
it, I think, is
razors.
it let's see if I can find it. Looking at our phones makes great audio.
Don't worry. They're here for it. Don't worry. We're pulling it up.
WOOLF.
OLF. Wolf. Razors.
Yeah.
I spelled raisin.
Wolf blades. WOOLF BLADES.
Okay.
Wolf blades.
All right. Wolf blades, razors. Okay.
Yeah, so he's making straight razors, and you
Oh, yeah,
want to
I've
talk
seen
about a
this
dude that's an
before.
artist? Like this dude's a fucking artist. Like
Sure.
I love it. But it's a straight razor, so it has to be stainless. Like it just basically has to be stainless.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, I have seen carbon steel razors, but
yeah, that's terrifies me. But I'm not. Yeah, you know, whatever. Live your own life. Y'all can do what you want to do. If I ever do it, it's stainless for me all the way.
for sure.
But he, I mean, he does all these like hair shows and stuff like that. But he does this like style of polishing too. But it's hard to see it. But he does a lot of RWL. But you can, when you're scrolling through, you can catch the reflections on some of them. Yeah, it's like there's a blue tint to it.
Yeah.
There's a blueness to polished RWL. I don't know where it comes from. Don't know why. But he does a lot of Damasteel too, which is where I met him from. Like the Damasteel. Carly took me over there, and she's like, I really like your polish. Have you ever seen Trevor's? And I was like, no, who's that? And she took me over here, and I was like, Jesus Christ! Like, I was like, thanks, Carly. Like,
Appreciate it. Let's not.
Yeah,
do that
because
again.
everything he does is absolute mirror. I mean, it is an absolute.
Wow.
Everything looks chromed. Like that's how
Yeah.
good the polish is. It looks chromed.
Dude, that's so hard to get that kind of a finish. Or at least the way I'm doing it.
Yeah, I'm
Which
not.
is
He's not sandpaper. You know.
not that cool. Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, he's another one who's like branding. Look at the top, like the tang up there. You can see like the reflection in it.
Yeah. He's in there.
But yeah, so anyway, so I really like that. That's why I'm kind of going with like RWL. Anyway, polishing. So Alfredo showed me how to do it, and it's just I have a regular old Milwaukee, you know, 49. I bought it off like Facebook Marketplace used. I think I paid $30 for the first one.
Sure.
And it's just a battery operated, you know, cordless multi-tool. And then they make drywall cutting heads for them.
Oh yeah.
And the drywall cutting head it's like they're like 1 inch wide with a 2-inch flare at the end with teeth. And you cut that shit off. Like just you cut the tip of it off. And then I glue guess wine, like mold maker stones is what I think they call them, or mold polishing stones. And you can get them in basically whatever grit you want. I usually start at about 600, and I'll do 600, 800, 600, 800, 1200, 1500. Yeah, 600, 6, 8, 12, 15 on stone.
Wait, sorry. You start at 6?
Yeah, start at 6. Well, this is after I've done all the work on the belt grinder.
Right. So you're coming off the machine at what?
4.
4. Okay.
And you can, doable. I mean,
so you can go straight to 6.
You can actually start at 8. I started at 6 because I started. That's how aggressive. That's how well this thing works. You can go to 8, but I've missed scratches, and you really want to. Like, I'm just like, no one makes me madder than myself. So like, so I just start at 6 because it's a little bit easier to kind of like to start there.
Yeah.
And it's 600, 800, 1200, 1500. And then it goes to diamond polishing, diamond paste.
Okay.
And then for that multi-tool, they make a triangular shaped uh, hard felt polishing pad. You can get them
Oh
off Amazon.
yeah.
And they use them for like car detailing is usually the application
Oh
for it.
okay.
And then the first paste is a 15. There's an overlap on the first paste, which is 1500 grit paste.
Yeah.
And it's 1500, 2500, 5000, 8000, 10,000, 14,000,
Holy
20,000.
shit.
And then you can jump to 50 if you really want to. But
Okay.
I find what I'm into, that's only the polishing. I have to etch after. So going past that for me doesn't make a whole lot of sense because I'm
Sure.
inevitably just going to kind of fuck it up in a way anyway.
Yeah.
But I can do a 12, 14-inch Tsuchihiki, both sides polished to 20,000 grit in 40 minutes now.
Wow. Yeah.
And
I'm usually spending like 40 minutes on one side, like and sanding.
there's a learning curve. You kind of have to learn how to like
Sure.
read that you've gotten the scratches away because it's a very muddy process. Like it's
Okay.
because so it doesn't like it takes a little bit. There is a learning curve to it. You're gonna miss some spots, and
Right.
There's the two biggest things I recommend is make sure you super glue the stone on there. Don't try to make this thing permanent. Don't epoxy it. Don't put don't go to Total Boat and get 24 hours like the 24-hour pure time epoxy, because you want that stone to fly off when you mess up.
I
Because if
see.
it doesn't fly off, you'll break the heel off the thing. You'll break the tip off your knife.
Right. Okay. So when you get into those more delicate areas, especially out of the tip and the heel, I see.
But like, I mean, like you can I can polish the hollow of a Yanagiba. Like it's like an S grind. Like you can do this with an S grind, and you can work that stone back and forth in that S grind and clean it out. And then once it's done to 20,000, I clean it obsessively with, I clean it with soap and I clean it with solvent to get everything off of that knife, and then I etch.
Sure.
And then it's buffing wheels from there.
Right. Okay. Wow.
But yeah, like Kyle Daly makes a setup. His is a little different. He uses a Sawzall, I think, is kind of the base body.
Oh, okay.
And so it is a different feel because it is, the multi-tool is sliding left and right like this. So it's kind of forgiving when you're using these things. If you do slip off the back of the heel and you hit the back of the heel, now the stones are soft. They're not really going to mess up the heel.
Yeah.
But that stone will go flying somewhere, and you gotta go chase it down and go find it.
Chase it down, wash it off, dry it
wash
off,
it off.
go
Clean it on your belt grinder and get good. Get all the glue off, and then you glue it back on. Let it sit for 10 minutes, and then you're back in business. Okay. So when I make these things, I make like 6 at a time, so I can just like keep it moving. Yeah. So when I have to fix it, I have to fix 6 at a time. So
I got you.
But it is the guest wine stones are great. I just recently tried the they're from McMaster Carr. McMaster Carr has a dye. It's like a dye cleaning. I can send you links if you want to post links to this stuff on the but they're not affiliate links. It's just where to buy the stuff.
Sure.
I'll send them. I'll just DM them to you. But the McMaster Carr stones I like better than the guest wine stones.
Oh, okay.
And then they do need a cutting oil. I use just like 3-in-1 oil.
Okay.
I
think that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, they need an oil to cut. They're oil cutting stones.
Right.
You can Windex and actually Simple Green will work too if you just don't want to sling oil everywhere. Simple Green's a little cleaner. Okay. But Simple Green will cut just as well because Simple Green, for whatever reason, just is a kind of a decent cutting lubricant apparently. So.
Sure. Okay.
But 3-in-1 oil is what I use.
3-in-1. Okay.
And then you have to like when you're using the stones, you can kind of use a rag to clean everything off, and you're not going to scratch anything. But once you get past stones into the diamond compounds, and I've used Diamond Tech. It's just ready to use right out of the box from Amazon. I've made my own diamond compound, which I used for a long time too.
Okay.
Because it's very simple to make and it's very, very cheap because you can just go on eBay and buy like, I want 4-micron diamond dust. And they're like, we got you. And, you know,
Oh, wow.
you get little baggies and you mix it up with like propylene glycol as like
Oh,
a
interesting.
suspension agent.
Yeah.
So you can make your own if someone is so inclined. And then Daniel is doing this thing, which he says it's an industrial grade, some kind of industrial grade of aluminum oxide that's supposed to be very, very good for the
Okay.
cutting compound. So I'm excited to try that because I don't love the Diamond Tech stuff.
Yeah.
You can never really get all of it out, and the consistency varies wildly.
Okay.
I'll get a batch where it's like most of it works, and then like the 1200 grit is just kind of shit for some reason, and then the next
Sure.
batch you'll be like, oh, the 600 is terrible, and it just has to do with the amount of the concentration apparently is just not very consistent. So
Yeah.
it's fine, it's cheap, and it works. But that's the whole reason I started making my own is because I was like, more diamond, more better. So yeah, so I started making my own.
Let's see. This is the best thing I can find on your Instagram. Of you working. It's actually the same video from earlier. And at this point, you have the
Yeah,
blade
you can. This
clamped
is.
up.
I mean, you can see what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
my
it's just
most requested video. Yeah, my most requested video is a how-to on how to do this, and it's just like, you know, the ADD. Just me filming anything long content is kind of hard
sure.
for me talking to myself anyway. So
Yeah. And then so you've gone through all the polishing, and at this point when you're etching, you've done also the mirror polish, or you do the mirror polish after the etching?
no, the mirror polish is done before the etching, which I
Okay.
think helps with the clarity of the hamon that you get out of it.
Sure.
There is a function to polishing this thing to that extent in
Right.
terms of the activity you can see, because there's absolutely a difference. You know, 80% of a hamon is taking pictures and polishing.
Sure. So we're just going through the video again.
Yeah.
There's
It's a good picture. Yeah, you can see this. That's a
you
great.
can see the tool. you can see the
the tool is
stone
a great
glued
spot to
on.
start. Yeah.
Yeah.
The sound on that video is actually pretty great. I love the sound of that video because it's all shop noises. So there's no music.
Oh,
Just
sure.
shop noises. Yeah.
ASMR.
So at this point, that thing is humming. It's like, wah, but
Oh, okay.
yeah. But yeah, and 45 minutes you can, and then it's buffing it out. So
Yeah. I remember at the Damasteel Invitational when we were talking at the end, you said something about polishing what sounded like a fucking ridiculous number of knives, but it was either 5 or 10.
you talking about my Damasteel badge before? Like, yeah. So
That you did them all in one day, and I was just like, "What?"
yeah. Damasteel was on whatever day Damasteel was, like the 18th or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think I brought 12 knives to the Damasteel show. I had 12 knives ready and done for the Damasteel Chef Invitational.
Yeah.
And all 12 of those knives were polished completely in 2 days.
Wow. That's freaking nuts.
Mirrors. I mean, every one of them is a mirror.
Well, and what's also really impressive is especially your single bevels, they have
Oh yeah, this is
sharp
it's a flex
geometry.
too. Yeah,
And so
it's
I
a
think
flex too.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would be like, "Oh, it's gonna blend out my crisp edges and shit like that." And I think if you got control like you have, you should be able to maintain those quite nicely.
That's
And
why I like the multi-tool version that goes kind of back and forth versus the Sawzall, which goes front and back.
yeah,
Because you can ride the bevel. You can actually, this is a good picture. That's a good one to show. So you can just ride the bevel on the stone,
yeah,
and if it just eclipses over the edge. So you
right.
can manipulate that bevel in very small ways to crisp it up with a stone.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
if it's
interesting. So you can kind of push that line around
I can move
if
the
you need
line.
to.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome.
And
Which
so then
is
you
so
do
hard to
one
do.
facet. Yeah, you do one facet, and then I flip it. So I'm, if the blade is this way and I'm doing this edge,
Yeah.
I then flip it this way and do the backside. So I'm always trying to approach the bevel.
Right. Yeah.
And then the backside of it's like really cool. I don't know if I assume I flipped this over. Maybe I don't.
Not in this post, but yeah, I think you
Yeah, but
do.
the backside of that's fully polished too.
Right. Let's see. Oh, no. Where it is?
Uh,
Oh, maybe this
there it
one.
is. Yeah, maybe that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
like the backside's fully polished. Like that's
Yeah.
like, yeah, which is you know
Well,
sharpening a single bevel is like sharpening a razor. Like it has to make contact with the stone.
right.
So what's really interesting with this, and this is fully
Oh
polished right here.
shit, missed it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fully polished there. It's not fully sharpened. You can see me like manhandling the edge right there.
Right.
But the coolest part about it was after I sharpened it, because then
There you go.
it was it's like a frosted edge. Like it's frosted,
Right.
so it's fully polished in the hollow, and then the tip and the ura
Yeah.
is completely polished.
Gotta
Or
love
it's
them
completely
frosted
like
tips.
frosted. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I feel like that makes sense for as a polishing process for especially for Yanagiba because fucking it's at least in regards to Don's video or around like chasing the Yanagiba and figuring out
Hmm.
how to for him to approach it. He's like he's got two different radiuses he's fucking around with in there, and then
Yeah,
you
and
got to blend all that together. But it
and that's
sounds like with
there's
this,
two radiuses in that.
yeah,
You can't
no, I
see
believe
it.
it.
It's hard to see it, but
Yeah,
it's initially cut in at and this is a whole other rabbit hole that can be gone down is how to make a fucking single bevel.
right.
And I'm not great at them, but this is like um, they're cut in. It's cut in and quenched at an 8-inch radius. Like
Yeah,
I'm trying to hog to depth
yeah,
before the quench, and then after the quench, it's evened out with a 12-inch radius, and then it's pushed to the very edges with a 36-inch radius.
Oh, wow. The
So
36.
I'm yeah. So I'm moving the ura
Yeah,
um, as I'm doing it because you're trying to control it just to be right behind the edge.
yeah,
Because these things they're sharpened from the back. They're not sharpened from the front.
right.
So there's a tiny, tiny micro bevel from the front that they do, but most of the work's done from the back.
Sure. Yeah, just to polish that burr, man.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
you also have some other really good examples. I think this one's got a single bevel. Yeah.
Oh no, that's a double. It's just got
Or
that
a
like
double, but
real
still like
like
that
Shinogi line.
bevel, yeah, the shinogi, where
Yeah.
that bevel meets the kind of like the flat up to
Hmm.
the spine. You can see it's there.
That's this is also that's like of these things that I do for myself.
Sure.
Like to me, I'm just like that's kind of a flex. It's just like, hey, you do that. Like it's like
No,
I'll
it's
tell you how
freaking
to do
awesome.
it. It's like I'll tell you how to do it, but it is I think people hide their geometry in chef knives in a lot of cases.
Sure.
Like that one's got it.
Yeah. So this would be more like either a wide bevel or a workhorse geometry.
Yeah, that's probably that's most. I think most of this batch was like a 1/8 inch spine.
Okay.
So it's a little bit. I was trying to trying to do something a little different. So these are definitely a little more of a steeper angle,
Sure.
a little more workhorse. And then there were some in that batch that were, that Shinogi line's pulled way up closer to the spine to make it like a
Sure.
laser.
Whew, man. It looks fucking good.
This one I love that one. I mean,
Oh
just
yeah, there you
there.
go.
You see the clouds in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool, man. But a lot of that's in the steel. Like Damasteel does a great, just a little plug for Damasteel, man. Like it's a great product.
Yeah. Oh geez. Oh, there's a mason bee across the ground. I thought it was like a giant beetle crawling across the ground.
Oh,
In the
yeah,
background.
it's
So
probably one of bees
the
at farm. Yeah.
oh yeah, look, there's Alfredo right there. Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a good dude.
Oh,
There's
this is
go up a little bit. Oh
okay.
yeah, that's
This is
some
another.
Nichols Damascus that I was messing around with.
Oh, Chad Nichols.
Oh no. That's not Nichols. That's not Chad Nichols. That stuff is
Oh, or is this bakery?
What the heck's his name? Adam DeVille. Adam DeVille made that.
Oh, Adam DeVille.
He's doing some cool stuff.
If we go up where?
Yeah, right here to the right. Go down the drawer full of them.
Oh yeah.
Cool, like reflection shot of that video. Like seeing all the light bounce around on them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like 2 days to polish all that.
That's so fucking crazy. Holy shit. 2 days. Oh my god.
I mean, they're you can see it. I mean, every last one of them is a fucking mirror. It's cool.
Yeah. Oh my god. And what are you etching the stainless with?
I'm doing like I love hot, like I'm hot and fast because I'm impatient. So it's like
Sure.
it's muriatic with a 95% muriatic with like 5% of ferric.
Okay.
And it's at like 120 degrees for 30 seconds, maybe.
Yeah.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
30 seconds, pull it out, hit it with a buffer, clean it all again, etch it the second time. You get like this chatoyance to it.
Yeah.
Like this like mother of pearl chatoyance if you etch Damasteel twice.
Yeah, well, and it's nice because you're getting you're not getting a super deep etch, which I feel like can really kind of mess with the performance of a knife sometimes.
I mean, I have done that.
Yeah.
Because I've the first time I did it, I was using cold instructions for a hot knife for hot acid.
Right.
And so I think I had it in there for like 4 minutes and it ruined a knife. Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's a bummer.
It is a bummer.
I'm just looking in here real quick. I think we'll let you go.
It's 3 hours, man. I know.
We did it.
It's been fun, man. It's been fun.
Good. Yeah, no, and I'm obviously we could probably keep talking forever, but I appreciate the time that you've offered and all the insight that you've offered. I think this the polishing process that that you've shared with us via Alfredo is, I mean, for me personally, is definitely something I want to start doing. I'll be interested to see how to adapt it to integral knives.
Yeah, that's
And so it'll be interesting to mess with it and figure out how to adapt it for integrals. But I think, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, I think it might combine. I might have to combine the Sawzall approach and the whatever I can't remember
the multi-tool.
Yeah, multi-tool approach.
They make a pneumatic one.
I've seen the pneumatic for the stones, for the die maker stones, with specifically like die maker stone holders, right?
Yeah, they make those. But then there's another one. It's in like the dentistry world, and I don't know what it's talking about because I'm like it's designed to polish like teeth, right?
Oh.
It's pneumatic, and it's a very, very fine and high oscillation, but it's
ultrasonic.
Small. Yeah, it's like very small round tools. So that would probably be the way. That would probably be the way for you because it's some kind of dental tool. I've seen it before, but I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
But you can get small stones, so being able to do those like real tight radiuses.
Yeah. Well, honestly, even I'll be interested to mess with it because I never do any wet sanding at all. And so wet sanding would be a whole new thing for me to kind of play with. But I think if you're using the stones especially, it's really necessary.
Oh yeah, they just won't cut the clog. So it's got to like
just load right up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'll be really interested to play around with that. And I have stones, so it's just a matter of getting a whole shit. Actually, I might have a multi-tool. I just bought a bunch.
People have them laying in their garage.
Yeah, a friend sold me, or actually the guy I rent my shop space from, he sold me a bag of, and they weren't crazy. They're like Porter cable, like tools, but there's like a Sawzall and a hand drill and a skill slot. There might be a multi-tool in there actually.
Yeah.
And then just adapt that.
Yeah,
but
there's always like I'm always like there's a better tool, and it's just so I'm constantly trying to find the better way to do it. So
well, and it's just like there's better things to do with our time, and if Like, there's no glory, there's no gold stars, there are no fucking high fives for spending hours upon hours hand sanding.
The notion of
What matters that finish
yeah,
piece and
the
how
notion
that
of
looks.
flexing because you took 12 hours to hand sand is like it's like it's the same people that are like, "Well, did you make the steel?" I'm like, "Did you make the sandpaper?" Like, come on. Like,
Did you grow the tree?
yeah, did you grow the tree? Like, how far do you want to go? That's my like favorite Reddit. That's the only reason I go on Reddit is to argue with people. So like, it's
Oh, nice.
because it's a toxic place anyway. So like,
Yeah.
I get my own toxicity out of it. So.
It's a great place to air grievances.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
therapeutic. That's my therapy.
There you go. There you go. Hell yeah, man. Well, I'm excited to see you in Atlanta at least,
Yeah.
and I wish you the best over in Austria. That
Thank
should
you,
be
man.
super
Thank you.
fun, and I look for everybody. If you're not everybody listening, if you're not following Trey yet, you can go find him on Instagram. He's at the number 3
Yeah.
RD Third Hill Blades.
Third Hill Customs. Third Hill
Customs. Oh my
Yeah,
god, Customs.
yeah.
Sorry.
Third Hill Customs.
I was like,
You
as
can,
I was
I
saying,
think
I'm
you
like,
can.
I think I'm
Yeah,
fucking that up right
yeah.
now.
No, you're good. You're good. At 3RDHILL.
Yeah, actually, here, and I'll pull it up on the do the screen share, and we can just so people can grab the screen and just see it right there. But yeah, Third Hill Customs. Yeah,
That's it. That's the one. Don't ask me for custom work, but you know.
yeah, dude, you're doing great work, and I'm excited to continue to follow your journey and your path, and especially with making steel.
Yeah.
Potentially getting into making your own hamon steel or whatever crucible steel for making hamons, like that'll be something cool. And I've actually like while a lot of people are chasing like the woots and the carbide banding and stuff, I think that's cool. If you can combine it with a hamon, that's cool. But I really have liked the idea of of being able to do crucible steel just to make your own literally like tailor made. That's what you got to do with all those trash blades. You just melt all
Yeah,
those
just melt them
motherfuckers
back
down.
down. the
Goodbye.
yeah. I just like, oh, I know what to do with them now. Yeah. I think the induction forge is going to be. I think that's going to change the way knife making is done on a small scale. I think it's cool. So
Hell yeah.
yeah.
All right, man.
But yeah, man, I'll see you in Atlanta.
I'll see you in Atlanta. And I just want to give one last shout out to all the super sponsors and everybody at the Patreon. Thank you all for your support in making this podcast possible. The super sponsors again this month are Russell Tinsley, who is at Can't Make Knives, which is his maker page. And his beer company is Oozle Finch Beers. That's OOZLE Finch Beers. Then we have Dan Hubbs. He is on Instagram and Facebook at the number 66 Mountain Knives. Then we have Lawrence Lake. He's Maritime Knife Supply, the man behind Maritime Knife Supply on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Maritime Knife Supply and MaritimeKnifeSupply.com. And then we have Gabe Fletcher, Anchorage Brewing at Anchorage Brewing on Instagram, and his maker page is at Anchorage Forge. And then last but not least, we have Josh Weston, who is at Josh A. Weston on Instagram, as well as at Dragon Forge EXP. That's the Dragon Forge Experience on Instagram. Thank you all so much for tuning in, being part of the conversation. I think we definitely covered a lot of ground, but there's always more to talk about, I'm sure. And I look forward to hopefully maybe having you back again. And until then, we will say goodbye to you all. Thank you.